storm of annihilation gathers over the supreme Murim. Before the setting sun, an ocean of steel waits, 100,000 souls destined for the abyss. The battlefield is a symphony of slaughter. Blood paints the earth as the laws of man are shattered by the weight of absolute power. This is the era of the strong, where mercy is a myth. Here in the supreme Murim, only one truth remains. The footprint of a god marks the end of an era. The world trembles as he steps onto the stage of history. At the pinnacle of martial arts, one man stands alone. A silhouette of dominance carved from the fires of war, he unified a world that dared to resist him. Witness the sovereign of the fist. His name is Asura. With scars earned from 1,000 victories and eyes that reflect the end of worlds, he is the undisputed king of all he surveys. An old master, clinging to the remnants of his pride, questions the inevitable. Your madness is as persistent as ever, Asura. Did you come all this way just to throw your life away? He speaks to a god as if he were a mere mortal. The master's arrogance knows no bounds. He believes 100,000 men can stop a force of nature. No matter how great you may be, you cannot stop an army of 100,000 on your own. He looks for a scheme where there is only raw, divine power. Asura turns his back on their insignificance. An army of 100,000? The question hangs in the air, cold and heavy as a tombstone. Numbers are for the weak who fear the dark. His gaze is a judgment. Just what significance does a mere number like that hold? To a god who has transcended the limits of the flesh, 100,000 is no different from one. They are all just dust waiting for the wind. The Fist King mocks their desperate logic. You're still playing those disgusting number games. That is why you can never defeat me in your lifetime. In his presence, the concepts of strategy and numbers are nothing but illusions. Fury boils in the old man's veins. He cannot comprehend the sovereign's disdain. Not a sliver of shame is in you. The audacity you have knows no bounds. Pride is the last refuge of the doomed. Behead HIM, the order is given, and the sea of steel surges forward. 100,000 weapons aimed at a single heart, unaware that they are charging into the jaws of annihilation. He appeared alone without a single weapon, but his martial power, the pure, unadulterated essence of destruction, flares like a dying sun. The air itself screams in terror. A single strike was enough to overwhelmingly destroy everything. Asura releases a shockwave that rewrites the map of the world. Men, horses, and mountains alike are erased from existence in a heartbeat. The earth shatters. A crater of divine judgment marks the spot where an army once stood. The world falls silent as the dust settles over the silence of 100,000 graves. Before his power, truly worthy of being called the strongest, even the masters who once commanded the Murim fell one after another. They died as they lived, insignificant before the true god of martial arts. The storm passes, and a new kingdom is born under the name of the Asura kingdom. Lightning strikes the peaks, announcing to the heavens that the reign of the Fist King has begun. Year 1 of the Asura kingdom. Asura stands atop a mountain of skulls, the world finally unified under his shadow. He has achieved what no man or god before him could. The capital city, Muwal, rests under the silver glow of the moon. A fragile peace has settled over the land, bought with the blood of an entire era. But even in the heart of glory, shadows are lengthening. Beyond the city, in the silent reaches of the mountains, a secret meeting is called. The moonlight illuminates a hidden path where loyalty and betrayal will soon collide. Manhwa, the woman he holds closest to his heart, bows in reverence. Congratulations, my liege. Her voice is like silk, masking the sharp edge of the blade hidden in her words. Even a god can be blinded by love. She speaks of his conquests, of the central plains unified as one. There is nothing else to achieve in this land. Her beauty is a shroud, her silver hair a veil over the treachery she is about to unleash. Asura senses a shift in the air, his instinct for war never truly sleeping. Just cut to the chase, Manhwa. Why did you call me to a place like this? In the darkness of the cave, the aura of a king demands the truth. She smiles, her grace masking a lethal intent. As you know, my lord, the only king who unified the central plains through pure martial power alone has been you. She weaves a tapestry of praise, lulling the sovereign into a false sense of security. For my lord, the greatest Fist King under the heavens, even the title of martial god is now insufficient. She gestures toward the darkness, her final trap prepared under the guise of an ultimate offering. In the depth of the cavern, Manhwa weaves her final lie. So, to offer a secret manual worthy of your majesty, I have brought you here today. She leads the sovereign toward the abyss, hidden beneath the promise of ultimate power. A chalice overflowing with the essence of ancient blood glows with a sinister light. The only one who can handle the power within this secret manual is you, my liege. The trap is set, its jaws wide open to swallow a king. Asura gazes upon the ritual orb, his presence alone commanding the very air to still. A secret manual, you say? Even in his curiosity, he stands as a monument of absolute dominance, unaware of the poison hidden in the gift. The martial god extends his hand, a touch that has shattered armies and reshaped kingdoms. As his fingers meet the liquid fire of the ritual, the silence of the cave is broken by the herald of doom. A single drop of blood falls, a weightless catalyst that triggers the collapse of an era. Time seems to slow as the herald of betrayal descends into the pool below. The surface ripples, an echo of the chaos to come. From the depths of the blood, the chains of the abyssal heavens begin to stir, hungry for the soul of a god. Annihilation erupts from the void. Blood-red chains surge upward like serpents of hell, lashing out to bind the one who stands above all laws. The ritual of the celestial abyss has begun. The chains of fate wrap around the martial god, their touch burning with the cold iron of treachery. For the first time in an eternity, the sovereign is met with a force that seeks to restrain his divine will. Wrist and ankle, heart and bone, the abyssal heavens tighten their grip. Every link is forged from the fear of those who could not defeat him in fair combat, now resorting to the coward's path of magic and deceit. Shadows fall over the king's eyes as the magnitude of the betrayal dawns upon him. Shock, then a cold, smoldering rage begins to ignite within the soul of Asura. The Fist King is bound, his majestic form ensnared by the glowing chains. Yet even in this state, his presence radiates a pressure that makes the very cavern tremble. The storm is brewing. Manhwa steps from the shadows, flanked by the masters who once bowed to his throne. Your tyranny ends here, Asura. As of today, the Sura kingdom will be ruled by me. The viper finally reveals its fangs. She looks down upon her former liege with cold ambition. It's futile to try escaping. No matter how strong you may be, you are powerless before the abyssal heavens, so just quietly. She speaks to a god as if he were already a ghost. Asura begins to move, the chains groaning under the weight of his ascending power. Manhwa, have you forgotten who I am? His voice is a thunderclap that shatters the silence of the cave. Red light bleeds from his eyes, a herald of the coming annihilation. I am destiny and destruction, personified. He does not fight for his life, he judges those who dared to touch the hem of his sovereignty. Panic replaces Manhwa's smug arrogance. What are you doing? Open the barrier of the celestial abyss at once. She realizes too late that chains of iron are nothing to a god who rules over death itself. The king roars, his fist clenching as he prepares to shatter the laws of the universe. Blood and energy spiral around him, a storm of divine wrath that threatens to tear the cavern asunder. Pure, unadulterated power. The chains begin to snap one by one under the pressure of his indomitable spirit. The masters look on in terror as the martial god refuses to be bound. Blood splatters across the scene, a testament to the sovereign's struggle. His face is a mask of pure, divine fury, an avatar of a god who will not accept the shackles of mortals. The ritual shifts, pulling Asura toward the center of the magic circle. The red energy becomes a whirlpool of annihilation, dragging him into a void where space and time have no meaning. Just what? The masters can only watch as the sovereign fights against the pull of the abyss. Even in the face of oblivion, his spirit stands tall, a pillar of defiance against the treachery of the world. A massive pillar of blood-red light erupts, consuming the cave and everyone within it. The power of the celestial abyss clashes with the weight of the martial god, creating a rift that will bridge two different worlds. As the light fades, the reflection of Manhwa is seen in a pool of blood. She has succeeded, yet her victory is stained by the shadow of the one she could not truly destroy. The king is gone, but his legend remains. The ritual of the celestial abyss has reached its grim conclusion, leaving the air heavy with the scent of divine blood. Manhwa stands triumphant before the assembly of masters, her eyes fixed on the empty throne that once belonged to a god. We congratulate our liege. The cowards of Murim sink to their knees, their voices joining in a hollow chorus of praise for their new queen. The age of the martial god has been smothered, and in the silence of his absence, a dark new era begins. The age of the Fist King has been smothered by the shadow of treason. We hail the new sovereign of the Sura kingdom. The masters of Murim bow their heads in shame, welcoming a queen whose throne is built on the ruins of a god. Manhwa gazes upon her stolen empire with cold, beautiful eyes. The legend of the one who unified the world is being erased. And so, the Fist King, Asura, a name that once commanded the heavens, is now spoken as a ghost of the past. The annals of history are rewritten in blood. The man who once ruled the world meets his end in such futility. Or so the world believes. Destiny, however, is not so easily silenced. Ding, the silence is shattered by the chime of an arrogant system. You have been summoned as a player. Would you like to participate? Yes/no. An invitation to a game that treats lives as mere statistics. The system falters in the face of an unexpected variable. Pardon, dear player, please hurry and press accept. Even the architects of this world's laws are not prepared for what is coming. A fist of pure defiance smashes through the digital facade. Shattered fragments of the system fly as Kim Yuta declares his absolute contempt for their rules. He does not play games, he conquers them. Meet Kim Yuta, a tower climber forged in the shadows. Standing in the dim, flickering light, his eyes reflect a coldness tempered through 1,000 hardships. What just happened? He mutters, feeling a violent tremor in the very fabric of his reality. Beside him, Nova, the tiny fairy guide, hovers with an expression of pure dread. Something incredibly ominous just. The air turns heavy, saturated with the scent of sulfur and impending annihilation. Yuda, watch out! Nova's scream barely precedes the eruption of a nightmare. From the shadows, the Inferno Balrog, a titan of fire and hate, leaps forward to erase the intruder from floor 998. The beast's massive claw tears through the air, but Kim Yuta is a force of agility. He dodges the strike with the grace of a sovereign, the ground exploding where he stood only a second before. He skids across the stone floor, his breath steady even as death breathes down his neck. TCH, This is not just a fight, it is an obstacle on his path to the pinnacle. The Balrog's throat glows like a forge. Inferno breath is being cast. Cast time, 2 seconds. The monster prepares to unleash the fires of hell, certain of its victory. Kim Yuta stares into the maw of the furnace, his mind already 3 steps ahead. He does not fear the flame, he calculates its weakness. A torrent of fire erupts. Inferno breath, an AoE fire magic attack capable of dealing 6,000 damage, engulfs the chamber. The world turns into a blinding white-hot void of destruction. But Kim Yuta is no ordinary player. Climber's strategy is ANALYZING, the skill. Analysis rate, 85%. He stands amidst the inferno, his very soul dissecting the enemy's power. Analysis complete. The fire no longer burns, it is merely data. Kim Yuta draws his blade, his presence now more terrifying than the monster before him. He is the master of this domain. Climber's strategy is automatically countering the skill. Fire resistance plus 150%. Remaining duration, 1 min 30 SEC. The system that tried to bind him is now forced to serve his survival. Yuta strikes. A blinding beam of light pierces through the monster's flame, a spear of judgment that shatters the Balrog's arrogance. The tide of battle has turned. He leaps into the air, the cold majesty of a king radiating from his form. The Balrog roars in desperation, but it is already too late. Its fate was sealed the moment Yuta drew his sword. The holy sword of Asterion resonates. A divine seal appears, summoning a power that stands above all demonic filth. This is the weight of a world's hope, concentrated into a single point of light. Heavenly judgment. A pillar of holy energy descends from the heavens, an absolute strike that rewrites the laws of floor 998. The Balrog is not just defeated, it is erased from existence. Heaven's judgments remaining, 910. The cost of a god's power is high, but the result is indisputable dominance. The system marks the usage as the dust of the demon settles. The Inferno Balrog screams one last time, its very essence being torn apart by the divine light. A monster that once ruled these halls is reduced to nothing but ash and memory. Quest complete. The Inferno Balrog has been annihilated. The system erupts in hollow praise for the conquest of the 998th floor, yet Kim Yuta treats these alerts with nothing but sovereign disdain. He has not come for rewards, he has come to shatter the tower itself. Final quest, reach the top of the tower. Standing over the smoldering ruins of his enemy, Kim Yuta exhales. Phew, Tilda, that was close, he mutters, his gaze already locked on the final door. However, a crushing, unnatural silence begins to bleed into the hall, a premonition of a power that stands beyond the system's reach. The echoes of the Balrog's demise still linger in the air. Nova, sensing the heavy silence, looks up at her master. What's wrong, Yuda? Is something the matter? Even the system's guide can feel the shift in the fabric of this world's laws. The pinnacle is within reach. Only the top of the tower is left now, Nova reminds him. The destination of a 3-year odyssey of blood and iron lies just behind the next set of gates. The tower pierces the heavens, a monument of arrogance built by a goddess to test the unworthy. Let's clear the tower quickly. NGO our FAMILIS, the promise of home. A distant dream that has kept Kim Yuta's blade sharp in the darkest depths. Kim Yuta's face hardens, his eyes reflecting the cold light of the tower's summit. Yeah, you're right, let's do this. The time for doubt has passed, the time for dominance is at hand. 3 years of survival, 3 years of rewriting the rules of this tower with his own hands. Now only the top remains. But as the sovereign of floor 998, Yuta feels an unease that no statistic can explain. A presence that shouldn't exist is waiting. His gaze narrows, his senses screaming a warning that his stats ignore. On the other side, what could possibly be waiting? The silence of the final floor is a heavy shroud over the coming storm. Nova hovers silently, her usual chatter silenced by the overwhelming pressure radiating from the doors of floor 999. The sovereign and his guide stand at the threshold of the unknown. A hand of iron pushes against the gates of destiny. Pull yourself together, KIMYUDA. The resolve of a survivor, forged in the fires of 1,000 battles, anchors his soul as the final trial begins. The doors groan, opening to a blinding radiance. YUDA, you're okay, right? Nova's voice is a small spark in the darkness. Yeah, let's GO in. He steps forward, ready to face whatever nightmare the system has concocted. Arrogance is for those who haven't earned their power, but for Kim Yuta, it is a statement of fact. There is no monster that can surpass MY stats. He is the apex predator of this world, and he is coming to reclaim his life. But at that moment, the atmosphere of floor 999 is not filled with demonic energy or divine light. It is heavy with the weight of raw, unadulterated martial intent, a presence that defies the system's logic. The silhouette of a legend emerges from the flames, a shadow of dominance that once ruled an entire world of warriors. The being that appeared before my eyes was not a beast, not a dragon, but a man who stands like a god. Behold Asura, the Martial God of the Murim. Even in this strange new world, his eyes burn with the fire of a sovereign. He looks upon the intruder with a curiosity that could level mountains. The Fist King stands with arms crossed, a monument of muscular power that mocks the very air of the tower. What are you lot? To him, the world's strongest player is merely a confused child holding a glowing toy. Nova is paralyzed by the sight. What is that? A gorilla, what's up with this AHJUSSI? She cannot quantify him. She cannot categorize a god who does not belong to her system. Kim Yuta stares at the bare-chested warrior, his mind struggling to process the anomaly. Don't tell me, this guy is the final boss? A man standing amidst the ruins of a monster's lair, exuding a pressure that makes the Balrog seem like an insect. Asura ignores their confusion, his own gaze sweeping across the high-arched windows and cold stone. What kind of place is this? So that woman MYOWOL really did lock me up in here. The betrayal follows him across dimensions, but a cage is only a cage until the king decides to leave. He's capable of speech. Yuta's tactical mind begins to whirl. That means he's a monster with some level of intelligence. He tries to apply the system's logic to a force that has already transcended it. The holy sword of Asterion slides from its scabbard, singing a song of judgment. No, don't be fooled by appearances, KIMYUDA. Whatever he looks like, he's the tower's final boss. He prepares for the fight of his life against the shadow of a martial god. So, I'll put an end to this now. Kim Yuta charges, a streak of light aimed at the heart of the legend. He does not hesitate, he does not bargain. He attacks with the full weight of a world's player. Asura barely reacts, a small grunt of amusement escaping his lips. Ha! He watches the glowing blade descend with the nonchalance of a god watching a mosquito. The world of martial arts and the world of systems are about to collide. The strike is unleashed, a vertical slash of pure, concentrated energy aimed at the Fist King. Yuta puts everything into this opening blow, seeking a quick annihilation of the anomaly before him. A shattering impact. The blade meets the skin of a martial god, and the room is engulfed in a shockwave that rewrites the air. The final battle of floor 999 has begun, not with a whimper, but with the roar of a world being broken. Kim Yuta descends like a divine executioner, his blade thirsting for the final victory. This is the end, he bellows, pouring every ounce of his soul into this singular, decisive strike. A flash of blinding gold illuminates the abyss, as the holy sword of Asterion awakens its true, celestial power. The heavens crack open as the ultimate technique, heavenly judgment, descends with the weight of a dying star, meant to obliterate anything in its path. HMPH, Kim Yuta thought with a cold, analytical mind. He is much weaker than I thought he'd be. The arrogance of the apex climber blinded him to the anomaly standing before him. Oi, you brat, a voice boomed, shattering his composure. The world stood still as Asura caught the divine blade between two fingers, his gaze radiating a terrifying, ancient pressure. What do you think you're doing? The sovereign asked with bored disdain. In no way, Kim Yuta gasped, his eyes widening in pure, unadulterated shock. He stopped my ultimate with just one hand, his mind reeled, unable to process the absolute denial of his power. Panic flared in the climber's heart as he scrambled back, the logic of the tower failing him. Is it because he's the final boss? He wondered, searching for an answer in a system that was starting to scream. The climber's strategy, the ultimate tool of analysis, struggled to quantify the god standing before him, the analysis rate crawling forward at a pathetic 78%. Analysis complete, the system chirped, a hollow promise of victory. The climber's strategy is automatically targeting their weaknesses, it declared, but the target had none. Strategy success probability, approximately 87.86%. Kim Yuta felt a surge of hope, yet Asura looked on, his eyes burning with a flame that transcended mere data. Cease, Asura commanded, a single word that carried the authority of the universe. In that instant, the very fabric of the system began to tear. Error, error, the status window screamed in agony. A critical error has occurred in Climber's strategy. The red boxes flashed like wounds. The probability of success given by Climber's strategy has plummeted. The system announced its own funeral. Success probability, 0.43%. The throne room felt like a tomb as Kim Yuta stared at the impossible reality. The numbers that had guided him for 3 years were turning into lies. Huff huff, the probability of success that Climber's strategy gave is less than 1%. Kim Yuta panted, his sweat cold against his skin. This has never happened before, he thought, the foundation of his world crumbling. In the shadows, a monstrous presence loomed, a reflection of the primordial power Asura held within. Just who the hell, the climber's mind fractured, trying to comprehend the being before him. Amidst the swirling embers and the wreckage of his pride, Kim Yuta looked at the man who had effortlessly dismantled his existence. Is this Ajasi, he thought, his voice small against the roaring silence of the god. Asura turned his gaze back, a predatory smirk playing on his lips. Hey brat, the martial god spoke, his voice a low rumble of thunder. No need to be so terrified. I do not bother fighting those who are not worth my time, Asura declared, turning his back on the greatest climber the tower had ever seen. What? Kim Yuta stammered, his ego bruised more than his body. I'm not worth your time. You say? The words stung like poison, igniting a flicker of desperate, wounded pride in Kim Yuta's eyes. With your current level of skill, Asura continued, his tone devoid of any malice, only cold, hard truth. I wouldn't waste even a single punch from this body on you. The martial god leaned in, his eyes glowing with an intense, inquisitorial light. So I'll ask you, what exactly is this place? He demanded, his presence crushing the air from the room. Ah, so that's how it's supposed to be. Kim Yuta's lips curled into a manic, realization-filled grin. Why neither heavenly judgment nor climber's strategy worked, the puzzle pieces were finally clicking into place. I get it now, he thought, a new, dangerous light igniting in his eyes. This stage was meant to prove my strength from the very start. A sudden hysterical laughter erupted from the climber, echoing through the cold chains of the throne room. Ha El Mao, Kim Yuta declared as the absurdity of the situation finally became clear. No wonder my attacks weren't dealing any damage. I didn't know there was a hidden gimmick like this here, lol. The logic of the martial god was finally within his grasp. The fear that once paralyzed his heart vanished, replaced by the cold, reckless resolve of a man who had nothing left to lose. Only by showing my true value can I actually deal damage, El Mao, he thought with a daring smirk. Standing before the sovereign of destruction, Kim Yuta prepared to gamble everything on a power that transcended the system itself. Kim Yuta declares with unwavering resolve, "In that case, I'll show and prove my value." He grips his sword as golden lightning begins to crackle around him, his spirit ignited by the martial god's challenge. The system responds to his sheer will. Activating unique skill, chosen hero, all stats will be maximized for a set duration. The Herald of the Tower prepares to unleash the peak of his power. Eat this, Kim Yuta roars as he lunges through the air, his body a conduit for divine energy. The absolute maximum that the stat system can grant. He descends like a thunderbolt, the crackle of lightning intensifying as he closes the distance to the stationary sovereign. A translucent blue screen flickers into existence, displaying the terrifying truth of his current state. Kim Yuta, level 99. HP and MP surging to 999,999. Every core attribute, strength, agility, intelligence, and luck, locked at the absolute limit of 999. Asura stares at the glowing interface with an expression of pure, unadulterated contempt. Strength and agility, 999, he mutters with cold disdain. Maxed out. The Fist King's gaze narrows, his eyes piercing through the digital illusion. You talk about your strength, with these pathetic mere numbers? He asked with a voice that carried the weight of 1,000 battles. He clenches his fist, a dark aura swirling around his knuckles. A world where people discuss strength through numbers while staring at blue windows. It's utterly revolting, Asura declared. His eyes ignite with a crimson flame, his scar pulsing with malevolent intent. It no longer matters what this place is, he whispered, the atmosphere turning heavy with the scent of impending doom. With a predatory grace, the martial god begins his counterattack. I'll be fixing you from the ground up, Asura proclaimed. H-A-A-A-A. Kim Yuta screams, committing everything to his final strike, unaware of the catastrophe about to befall him. Asura moves with a speed that renders the tower's laws obsolete. First, starting with that disgusting blue window, he snarled. The world trembles as the sovereign executes a strike that transcends the physical plane. Fist King Asura style, destruction. The blow shatters the status window into 1,000 digital shards. The impact is absolute. A shockwave of pure force erupts from the point of contact, sending Kim Yuta flying back as the very foundation of his reality is obliterated. AHHHH, Kim Yuta howls in agony as the backlash of his shattered status rips through his soul, his mouth agape in a silent scream of despair. The status window, the source of his strength and his guide through the tower, is reduced to nothing more than broken glass against a void of darkness. Warning boxes flash red against the darkening sky. Error, error, the system has sustained critical damage. What the hell, how is this even possible? A voice cries out in disbelief as the tower itself begins to vibrate and crack. This is fucking ridiculous. The collapse of the digital world continues. All stored stats have disappeared. System recovery, failed. Data recovery, failed. The system is shutting down. Dust and debris swirl around Asura as he stands amidst the ruins of the 999th floor. Do you see now? He asked. True strength cannot be measured with numbers. He looks down at the broken climber with a smirk of absolute superiority. That blasted numbers game ends here, you brat, Asura declared. Ah, Kim Yuta gasps, his vision blurred as he falls through the air, the tower literally crumbling around him. A final mocking message appears above his head. Kim Yuta LV1, a hollow, broken laugh escapes his lips as tears stream down his face. Yes, I was wrong, he thought with bitter acceptance. 3 years ago, the present chaos of the summit dissolves into the haunting clarity of the past. A massive, spiraling tower pierces the heavens, standing as a monument to destiny. I was summoned to a tower of unknown origin, Kim Yuta recalled, his spirit returning to the moment his world changed forever. The journey was never a solitary one, but the cost of the climb was written in blood. I climbed the tower with many comrades, but, Kim Yuta thought, the faces of the fallen flickering in his mind. Bodies lay scattered across the cold stone, a grim testament to the tower's absolute cruelty. He remembered the exact moment his resolve began to waver, back when the only one who survived was. Kim Yuta sits amidst the carnage of a lower floor, his spirit dampened by the relentless toll of the climb. Hey, Nova, he called out, his voice hollow. If I conquer the tower, can I really go back to my original world? He stares at the flickering torchlight, his mind a labyrinth of doubt. The more I think about it, the stranger it is. They tell us to just climb the tower blindly without knowing what dangers await. In a situation where nothing is guaranteed, isn't it natural not to climb it at all? The small, ethereal figure of Nova floats before him, her blue eyes reflecting his sorrow. As you said, Yuda, even if we climb the tower, returning to your original world might be impossible, she whispered, her words a heavy truth. Yet she offered a glimmer of celestial hope. But Goddess Eshua said that everything in this tower has a purpose, Nova explained, trying to bolster his flagging resolve. Kim Yuda listened, his gaze fixed on the ground. Since she said so. Nova clenches her tiny fists, her face lighting up with an encouraging smile. Surely your journey, Yuda, will have a precious meaning. Back in the grim reality of the present, Asura looms over the fallen climber, his eyes glowing with an ominous light. These tedious number games will now end here, brat, the sovereign declared. Kim Yuda gasps, the world spinning as he stares up at the being who just dismantled his existence. Debris from the shattered ceiling rains down around them. A notification box, once a symbol of his pride, now hangs like a death sentence above his head. KIMYUDALV1. I messed up, he thought, the weight of his absolute reset crushing his spirit. Status window, he stammered, his eyes darting around the empty space where his power once resided. Asura stands tall, a dark silhouette against the blue glow of the tower's magic. Inventory, quest window. He frantically tries to summon the interfaces that had been his lifeline for 3 years, but there is only silence. No way did the status window really disappear, he screamed in his mind. System reboot, there's no way something like this is possible. Asura looks down at the frantic climber with a look of pitying arrogance. How utterly pathetic. Are you still unable to escape from those number games in your delusions? The martial god's voice is like a death knell. Those disgusting blue windows will never appear again, he promised. Kim Yuda cowers on the floor, his body trembling with primal fear. Please, spare me, he begged, the legendary climber reduced to a terrified child. Asura turns his head slightly, his expression one of bored indifference. As I said before, I have no interest in killing someone who isn't worth fighting. He kneels down, bringing his face level with the trembling Yuda. So, I shall ask you this, what kind of place is this? The sovereign's eyes pierce through Yuda's soul. What must I do to return to my original world? Kim Yuda's mind reels at the revelation. Oh, original world, he stuttered. Does that mean this guy is also a player like me? He looks at the martial god with a mix of awe and confusion. I don't know how to get back to my world either. Other than clearing the final stage, there's really no other way. Yuda managed to whisper, his voice shaking. Asura pauses, the concept of clearing alien to his warrior's mind. Final stage, CLE, AR. What kind of nonsense is that? The sovereign asked, his patience wearing thin. Kim Yuda's eyes widen in bewilderment. Who is this guy? He thought. Did he come from the Joseon dynasty or something? Well, you see, Kim Yuda began, realizing he had to explain the tower's fundamental logic to a god who didn't understand it. To put it in simpler terms. He claps his hands together, his gamer instincts momentarily overriding his fear. So in one word you have to clear this entire tower. Asura repeats the words with a dark, contemplative frown. The entire tower must be cleared. Kim Yuda nods vigorously, a desperate, eager smile hiding his internal terror. Yes, exactly, haha. From the very first floor to the top, you have to clear the whole tower without leaving anything behind. The climber attempts to maintain a friendly, helpful facade, though a cold bead of sweat rolls down his temple. So Tilda, if you're a player too, mister, start slowly with the quests. That's simple enough. He believed he was explaining the rules of survival, unaware that the martial god had a very different definition of clearing. A ferocious, predatory grin spreads across the martial god's face. In that case, right now, Asura declared, his voice a low growl of anticipation. I shall crush this damn tower. Kim Yuda freezes, his hands raised in a desperate attempt to stop the inevitable. What? He screamed, his heart hammering against his ribs. No, mister, that's not what I meant by clearing IT. The sovereign ignores the pleas of the insignificant mob. He channels his divine wrath into his fist, the air around him beginning to crackle and burn, Fist King Asura style. With a roar that shakes the foundations of the world, he unleashes a strike of pure, unadulterated annihilation. The 999th floor disintegrates as the shockwave travels downward, floor by floor, a vertical avalanche of stone and steel. Destruction. The label itself is an understatement for the carnage he has wrought. Fragments of the once-proud monument rain down through the blue sky. Kim Yuda stares into the abyss as his world falls apart. Holy shit, he managed to gasp, his mind unable to grasp the scale of the martial god's power. And no, wait, the climber howls as he is swept up in the collapse. Why the hell are you destroying a perfectly fine tower? The system, the architect of this trial, begins to fracture under the weight of the anomaly. A red alert box screams across the void. Error. The tower has been destroyed by an abnormal entity. The spiraling monolith, the beacon of hope for countless climbers, is reduced to a rain of gravel and dust. GH. Kim Yuda screams as he falls through the air, his level 1 body unable to endure the velocity. Who the hell is that guy? He thought with a mix of terror and awe. He looks up at the silhouette in the center of the destruction, a god amidst the ruin, destroying the tower with his bare hands. The climber's mind fractured. How is that even possible? Yuda, a high-pitched, frantic voice called out. A small, blue-clad figure dives through the wreckage, her hands reaching out for the falling hero. "And Nova," Kim Yuta gasped, his eyes widening in relief. The system guide has returned, her face set in a look of grim determination. With a sudden, forceful grip, Nova catches the back of his coat, her small frame straining against the terminal velocity. "Where have you been all this time?" Kim Yuta yelled over the roaring wind. "I thought you were gone forever." Nova looks back, her blue eyes shimmering with apology. "Sorry, Yuda, I was late because I had to grab your sword." She pulls him onto a piece of floating debris, her gaze fixed on the center of the vortex. "More importantly, let's get out of here," Nova commanded. "Something big is about to happen here soon." Kim Yuta stares at the gathering darkness where the peak of the tower once stood. "Something big," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. What could be bigger than the current situation? He wondered, his gaze fixed on the flickering digital static that was starting to consume the sky. The system's dying breaths are filled with panic. A purple alert box flickers in and out of existence. Error. Illegal access DETCTED. At the heart of the wreckage, a swirling orb of pure entropic darkness manifests. A black hole, hungry and indifferent, begins to feed. The digital purge begins. A message box hovers over the maw of the abyss. DELETING all data from the DESTROYED tower. The sky itself seems to be tearing apart, revealing the hollow architecture underneath. Kim Yuta and Nova look on in horror. "What's this now?" the climber screamed. "The tower debris," he breathed, watching as massive chunks of the monument are pulled toward the singularity. "Is all being sucked in? I don't know what that hole is," he thought with a sinking feeling. "But if we get caught in it," he whispered, the gravitational pull starting to tug at his clothes, "we'd really be screwed, wouldn't we?" The system's garbage collection protocols are reaching their breaking point. A final, desperate warning flashes across the world. Warning, the trash can is almost full. Data that could not be deleted is leaking out. The Sovereign of Destruction descends, landing amidst the pulverized remains of the tower he just erased from existence. Purple energy, a remnant of the system's broken protocols, crackles around his boots. He looks around at the barren wasteland of rubble and dust, his gaze sharp and questioning. Asura grunted, sensing a ripple in the fabric of this broken reality. The martial god glances down, his expression one of mild annoyance as Kim Yuta and Nova scramble toward him through the ruins. "I feel like I just stepped on something," the Sovereign noted with a voice that carried the weight of a landslide. "Was it just my imagination?" He stands tall against the horizon, his arms crossed over his massive chest as he surveys the empty sky. "Anyway," he muttered, his patience starting to fray, "why isn't anything happening?" Asura looks back at the terrified climber with a look of absolute certainty. "Just like that brat said," he declared, "I've completely cleared the tower." Kim Yuta's scream of pure, unadulterated frustration tears through the air. "No, mister," the boy howls. "I didn't mean clearing the tower in that sense." The legendary climber, now reduced to a level 1 commoner, clenches his fist in a futile rage. "Even though you're overpowered," Kim Yuta roars, his eyes wide with frantic desperation, "are you just going to go around destroying everything?" "What if something happens?" Kim Yuta bellows, unaware that the something he fears is already behind him. At the edge of the ruin, the purple vortex of the system's trash can begins to pulse, a hungry maw ready to consume the remains of a world the martial god just broke. A pillar of divine light descends from the heavens, shattering the earth with the weight of a goddess's arrival. Kim Yuta stands paralyzed, witnessing the terrifying manifestation of a power that transcends the status window. The system screams in warning as the world itself trembles under this celestial intrusion. Amidst the crackling lightning of the system's instability, the martial god senses a familiar and detestable presence from his past. Asura stares upward with a cold, piercing gaze, his ancient memories stirring. Beside him, Kim Yuta gasps in shock, his eyes wide as he feels the oppressive aura of a being who treats players like insignificant bugs. Asura thought with a voice like grinding stone, "I thought a successor had finally appeared, but the air grows thick with the scent of an unwelcome divinity." A figure of ethereal beauty and absolute malice stands before them, her silver hair flowing like a river of moonlight. Eshua looks down upon the martial god with a gaze that dismisses his legendary status as nothing more than a glitch in her grand design. She spoke with divine condescension, but it's just an unwelcome guest. The very air around her ripples with the authority of the one who created this purgatory. Asura's face contorts into a mask of pure shock as he recognizes the face of his eternal nemesis. The pride of the Fist King is shaken by the sudden appearance of a woman he once knew in another life. He breathed out in disbelief. "Why you are?" The realization strikes him harder than any physical blow. Eshua glides forward, her every step accompanied by a pulsing magical circle that defies the laws of the status window. Kim Yuta watches from behind, his mind reeling as the martial god calls out a name that carries the weight of 1,000 years of hatred. Asura roared in fury, "MYOWOL." The silence of the tower is shattered by the name of the sovereign who rules this nightmare. The goddess stops, her eyes narrowing with a dangerous curiosity as she inspects the being who dared to challenge her creation. She spoke with a voice that echoed like a death knell, "Was it you? The arrogant bastard who destroyed my tower?" Her beauty is a shroud for a malice that spans dimensions. The insult ignites a fire in the heart of the Fist King, his teeth grinding together with a sound like crushing rock. Asura's rage boils over, his pride as a martial god insulted by the woman who once treated his world as a playground. He grits his teeth in a silent vow of destruction. Unleashing a roar that could split mountains, Asura lunges at the goddess, his muscles tensed with the intent to kill. He screamed his defiance at the heavens. "So you were hiding here, MYOWOL. How dare you do that to me?" Every ounce of his sovereign power is channeled into a single, devastating strike against the architect of his suffering. With the casual indifference of a child swatting a fly, Eshua merely flicks her finger. The system's absolute authority responds to her command, bending space and time to suppress the martial god's unbridled fury. A faint shimmer of purple energy emanates from her hand, signaling the end of his charge. The earth shatters as a massive force of gravity slams Asura into the dirt, pinning him down like an insignificant insect. Eshua stands over him, her power absolute and unchallenged, as the very ground craters under her divine will. The Fist King, a man who mocked the heavens, is crushed by a single gesture from the woman he hates. Kim Yuta can only watch in horror as the man who easily destroyed his entire world's logic is humbled in an instant. He cried out in frantic desperation, "Mister." The sight of Asura's defeat is a blow to the very core of his soul. Eshua looks down at the struggling Asura, her expression cold and devoid of any mercy. The gap between them is not one of numbers, but of existence itself. She whispered with chilling calm, "Did you not hear me? Her presence is a void that swallows all hope." Leaning close to the pinned martial god, the goddess repeated her question with a sneer of pure disdain. She demanded an answer from the fallen sovereign. "I am asking you, are you the one who destroyed my tower?" Her gaze pierced through his pride, searching for any lingering spark of rebellion that dared to defy her. Kim Yuta stands frozen, his mind racing as he tries to comprehend the level of power unfolding before him. He thought with a heart full of dread, this is impossible. Subduing that monster of a man in one go, could it be? The reality of their situation is a nightmare from which there is no waking. Looking at the back of the silver-haired woman, Kim Yuta recalls the warnings of his guide. A terrible realization dawns on him as he connects the dots of this grand conspiracy. He thought in a state of growing panic, could the goddess Eshua, that Nova Mentioned, be this person? The true master of the tower has finally revealed herself. Pinned to the earth, Asura's hand claws into the dirt, his fingers digging deep into the soil as his martial spirit begins to stir. Even under the weight of a goddess, the Fist King refuses to yield. He growled from the depths of his soul, "I see. A storm is brewing within the heart of the fallen god." Asura begins to force himself up, his muscles bulging as he fights against the unseen pressure. He spoke with a voice thick with venomous insight. "You are certainly different from the MYOWOL I know. SHE didn't use this kind of strange power." He recognizes that this woman has traded her martial soul for the hollow authority of a system. Drawing upon his ancient wisdom, Asura crouches low, his aura beginning to flicker with a dark, rebellious light. He challenged the goddess with a defiant smirk, "But JUDGING, by the way you speak, you're definitely the one who built that damn tower." The architect and the destroyer finally face one another. A wild, crazed grin spreads across Asura's face, his eyes burning with the fires of divine wrath. He looked upon the goddess with absolute disdain as he spoke his truth. "Those disgusting number GAMES. Were they also your doing? To a martial god, the system is nothing more than a childish toy used to bind the strong." Kim Yuta and Nova stare in disbelief as the conversation turns toward the very foundation of their existence. Kim Yuta shouted with the frustration of a man who has lost everything. "Fine. I cleared it all just as you said. The damn tower." The 3 years of his life spent in blood and tears were all dictated by this woman. Eshua remains unmoved by the human's outburst, her gaze lingering on the martial god. Kim Yuta's voice continues to echo, full of bitterness and betrayal, and those disgusting number GAMES too. Every stat, every level, every death was part of her twisted amusement. Ignoring the goddess's suppression, Asura stands tall, his fists clenched as he prepares to reclaim his sovereignty. He declared his intent with a roar that shook the very foundations of the tower. "So immediately return me to my rightful place, my kingdom." He will not be a pawn in her grand game any longer. A soft, mocking sound escapes Eshua's lips as she watches the Fist King's futile bravado. She looks at him with the amusement of a creator watching her creation try to break its chains. She let out a soft, condescending chuckle, PFT. The martial god's demands are nothing more than a joke to her. Eshua bursts into a fit of melodic, cruel laughter as she mocks the very concept of their survival. She laughed with a sound that chilled the soul, PUHAHAHA. "You're quite amusing." Her joy is born from the absolute hopelessness of those trapped within her grand design. The laughter fades into a silence more terrifying than the mockery itself. Kim Yuta and Nova watch in stunned horror as Eshua destroys the only truth they ever believed in. She spoke with a smile that offered no salvation, about you being able to go back to your original world by clearing the tower. Who told you such an absurd thing? This revelation is but a prelude to the goddess's next impossible challenge. Eshua looked upon the ruins of her creation with a chilling indifference. The goddess declared with a voice that brooked no argument. "Fine, then. Whether it's the tower or the stat windows, go ahead and destroy as much as you like." Her words were a challenge to the sovereign power of the martial god. A sinister purple orb pulsed in her hand, the very air crackling with the weight of her divine authority. Eshua proclaimed with a cold smirk, "If you really destroy everything I've made, I'll send you back to the world you came from." It was a promise made in the shadow of absolute control. Looking toward the young man who had spent years climbing her nightmare, the goddess's eyes gleamed with malice. Eshua whispered with a dark delight, however, "It be easy." Behind her, the silhouettes of those discarded by the system began to emerge from the digital haze. The sky flickers like a broken screen as the system executes a desecrating purge. The interface flares with a nauseating pink light, signaling the horror about to land. Restoring data from trash, initiating production of dummy players. The fallen are no longer allowed to rest. Kim Yuta stares at the emerging anomalies, his blood running cold as he feels the familiar warmth of those he thought were gone forever. He trembles in absolute dread. What is this? His entire reality is being twisted by the sick whims of a goddess. From the depths of the system's glitches, familiar faces appear one by one, but their eyes are now white and hollow. Kim Yuta screams in total disbelief. "Why are you all here?" These are the very comrades he buried with his own hands in the name of the tower's glory. Eshua's face becomes a mask of divine mockery as she enjoys the sight of the young man falling into the abyss of despair. The goddess sneers with malice, "Because from now on, the towers you must destroy." Her plan is far grander and more cruel than a simple climb. Above the clouds, massive structures tear through reality, casting long shadows over the dying world like monuments of doom. Eshua's voice echoes across the heavens. "They still exist in infinite numbers in this world, and they need to be fed." Before the goddess can even finish, a shadow drenched in murderous intent, with eyes glowing with golden energy, lunges forward like a streak of lightning. Asura cannot stand this insult. He charges to teach her a lesson in arrogance. Like a resurrected corpse fueled by pure rage, every movement Kim Yuta makes is now a betrayal of the righteous life he once lived. He leaps into the air, unleashing a devastating slash aimed directly at the goddess's head. Amidst the army of the dead, Kim Yuta recognizes the silhouettes of those who died so he could live. Her earlier warning echoes in his mind like a curse. However, it won't be easy. They are not monsters. They are his family, his own flesh and blood. The red-haired warrior and the grizzled veteran, once heroes of the climb, now stand as soulless guardians of the status window. Eshua continues her cruel decree. "These towers need your souls to exist. Death is not the end, but the beginning of your slavery." The Legion of the Fallen stands in formation behind their queen, their eyes fixed on Kim Yuta with a programmed hatred. They are the discarded data of 1,000 failed attempts, now weaponized to eliminate the last survivor. The goddess throws her head back and laughs, a mockery that echoes even to the dying stars. Eshua proclaims with absolute ecstasy, "This nightmare is eternal. You will forever be the batteries for my eternity." From the mouth of a puppet comes a distorted, agonizing echo of a name. The dummy player rasps from the void. "You, duh." Kim Yuta's jaw drops, his eyes wide in a shock that threatens to shatter his mind. This isn't just a technical glitch, it's a cold-blooded psychological execution. The resurrected corpse screams, its voice filled with a mechanical urgency that makes Yuta's skin crawl. "Hurry, climb the tower. Everyone, enter the tower." The very words they once used to motivate each other are now weapons to torture his soul. Eshua looks toward the horizon, her mind already on the grand machinations of the universe she seeks to balance with blood. She speaks with chilling arrogance. "No matter what power you possess, the balance of this world will not be easily broken by a mere pawn." Kim Yuta doesn't need to hear another word. Everything has finally clicked into a sickening truth. Like a blind man suddenly seeing the harsh light, he silences his thoughts and lunges at the goddess with reckless abandon. He surges forward, unleashing a devastating arc of his blade aimed straight for her head. It is a strike fueled by his absolute peak power, a slash heavy with years of suppressed agony and the betrayal he has endured. A hexagonal shield of purple energy materializes around Eshua, stopping the blade in an instant. The goddess gazes at the attack with the indifference of one looking at an ant. Yuta's voice rings out, choked with confusion. "What? Why?" She looks back at the pathetic creature, now entirely consumed by blind fury. "This piece of trash dares to touch me?" She sneers, her voice dripping with absolute contempt for a flawed creation. Kim Yuta finally breaks, his voice a raw scream of agony filling the empty base of the tower. He wails toward the heavens. "What are you doing? Didn't my comrades sacrifice themselves for justice?" Memories of blood, sweat, and shared dreams surge back like a tragic symphony of meaningless sacrifice. He realizes with bitterness, "They risked their lives with me to climb this damn tower with no purpose. It was all just a sick joke." Kim Yuta screams in pure fury at the deity who treats his friends as mere data points. He roars at the sky, "And yet you dare to treat them like this? Is this why you brought us here, just to be bait?" Eshua unleashes a wave of divine purple energy, the sheer pressure of her presence silencing the air itself. Kim Yuta can only stare in shock as the world shatters around him. The sovereign power of the architect is absolute and unyielding. The goddess turns her back on the broken warrior, her long silver hair trailing like a funeral shroud. She speaks coldly. "Isn't it obvious? You are merely the batteries required to maintain the perfection of this world." A twisted, malicious smile graces her face as she mocks the instability of her own creation. "The world I created is still unstable, so I need your suffering for energy. Your sacrifice is my sustenance." Eshua explains her cold-blooded logic, each word cutting deeper than any blade. That's why I made you climb the tower through fake quests. The more you sacrifice, the stronger the energy. Yuta grits his teeth, his soul burning with a sense of total violation. With the casual cruelty of a child discarding a broken toy, the goddess prepares to leave. I no longer have any business with a piece of trash that has run out of energy. You have no more value to me. Purple energy swirls around her hand as she prepares to erase the ant before her. So, vanish from here, player nim. That title is now the final, mocking insult to everything he once took pride in. Yuta grits his teeth until they nearly shatter, tears of hatred and regret streaming down his face. They were slaves from the start, denied even the peace of death. He hisses in agony. Damn it! The world he fought for was a lie from the very beginning. The weight of his lost comrades crashed down upon him, a tide of grief that threatened to drown his spirit. Yuta sobbed in the shadow of the crumbling tower, thinking with soul-crushing despair, it's all my fault. I should never have climbed that tower in the first place. Every step upward had been a step toward this tragic revelation. Regret pooled in his eyes like molten iron, his vision blurring with the memories of those who fell for his sake. Yuta thought with a cold, desperate intensity, if only I were a little stronger. If only I were a little wiser. I could have eliminated that woman. The fire of revenge was the only thing left in his broken heart. Suddenly, a sovereign hand descended from the heavens of her twisted world, shattering the illusion of her absolute control. A power that defied the system itself struck down with the force of 1,000 dying suns. The arrogance of the goddess was met with the absolute strength of a martial god. The earth shatters, and the air screams as the Fist King makes his presence known. The very foundation of the tower tremors under the weight of a truly divine wrath, signaling the end of her unchallenged dominion. A thunderous roar of impact echoed through the ruins. Eshua stared in absolute shock, her divine composure broken by the intrusion of a force she could not account for. She breathed out in disbelief. What? Her world of numbers and rules had been breached by a being of pure, raw intent. Asura looked down at the weeping boy and declared with a voice of stone, IVEMISJUDGDYOU, brat. Standing tall and fierce, the martial god Asura flexed his muscles, his presence alone warping the system's logic. He looked at the goddess with a gaze that promised total destruction. Asura roared with a wild, terrifying pride, how dare you lay a hand on my prey before I did? To him, the architect of this world was nothing more than another opponent to be crushed. Yuta could only stare in awe and confusion at the man who had effortlessly halted the goddess's hand. He stammered out a single word of recognition, USSI. Asura looked down at him, his expression an inscrutable mask of power. Asura declared with authoritative calm, your courage is admirable, but it's still too early for you. The path to godhood was not one the boy could yet walk. With a burst of speed that shattered the sound barrier, Asura lunged at the celestial being. He spoke with the cold certainty of an executioner, the one who will take her head. The status window itself glitched in fear of his unbridled martial prowess. Eshua gasped in shock as the predator closed the distance. A thunderous explosion of red and orange light consumes the battlefield as the Fist King strikes. With the force of a falling star, Asura brings the goddess to her knees, slamming her into the earth with a contemptuous disregard for her divinity. The ground itself groans under the weight of his absolute strength. Asura grinned wildly, his eyes burning with the fires of divine wrath as he loomed over the fallen architect. He proclaimed his sovereignty with a voice that echoed through the dimensions. Is this king? He was the master of his own fate, a being beyond the reach of her petty rules. Asura's hand closed around the goddess's neck, his grip an iron vice that threatened to choke the very essence out of her. Eshua stared up at him, her fear replaced by a terrifying curiosity. She whispered with a voice of dark wonder, truly amazing, to exert such power without the system. Even at the threshold of death, she marveled at the anomaly before her. Tendrils of purple energy erupted from the goddess, her eyes glowing with a renewed, sinister light as she fought to regain control. Eshua declared with a smile that promised a new kind of torture, however, I won't let that power run wild. The system's rules began to tighten around the martial god like a cage of shadows. Asura's eyes widened as he felt a strange, cold power beginning to seep into his being, dulling the fire of his martial soul. He roared in a mix of surprise and pure, righteous anger. What is this? How dare you use another wicked trick on me? The architect was not yet defeated. Eshua leaned in, her voice a poisonous whisper that carried across the entire world. She spoke with the authority of a ruler assigning a final task. Please, conquer every tower in this world. Her mockery of their goal was the ultimate insult to their journey. Asura could only stare in shock as her energy intensified. The goddess began to fade into a vortex of purple light, her beauty a radiant mask for her infinite malice. Eshua declared her final challenge with a smirk that offered no hope. I shall be waiting for you at the highest point of this world. The stage was set for a conflict that would span the entire globe. The goddess had faded into the purple mist of her own design, leaving only the settling shockwaves of her power and a silence heavier than the battle itself. Kneeling in the crater of his own futile strike, Asura bowed his head in a simmering, thwarted rage, his thoughts beginning to blur the line between the architect who just left and a ghost from his ancient past. A ghost of a memory flickers before Asura's eyes, the image of a woman draped in the elegance of a lost era. Mayawal pleaded with a voice from the past, please, conquer every country in this world. The weight of her words once fueled a sovereign's ambition, a divine command that still echoes in the martial god's soul. Asura walks through the wreckage of the system's lies, the echoes of the goddess Eshua's mocking laughter still ringing in the air. The physical resemblance between the two women is a thorn in his side that refuses to be ignored. He thought with cold suspicion, no matter how much I think about it, she, resembles her. Looking toward the shattered sky, the Fist King questions the destiny that dragged him from his throne to this digital purgatory. The name of the woman from his past is a curse upon his lips. Asura thought with a storm of fury brewing in his chest, why on earth did you send me to a place like this? MYOWOL. The silence of the ruins is shattered by the guttural roar of a resurrected warrior, a shadow of the man it once was. A dummy player lunges with the mindless intent of a programmed ghost, its blade seeking the blood of its former leader. The air is thick with the stench of death and the crackle of system glitches. Kim Yuta is forced into a desperate struggle, his sword clashing against the very man he once called a brother. The mechanical precision of the puppet is a mockery of the martial bond they once shared. Every strike is a reminder of the goddess's absolute cruelty. The young player's voice breaks as he stares into the lifeless eyes of his fallen comrades, his heart shattering with every recognized face. Kim Yuta screamed in absolute agony, JUNGMYUNGHON. CHOIYUNSEO, don't you recognize me? It's me, KIMYUDA. The despair of the survivor is a banquet for the architect of this tower. Floating amidst the chaos, Nova observes the tragic spectacle with the detached logic of a system guide, her voice a cold splash of water on Yuta's burning grief. Nova declared with clinical coldness, it's no use, YUDA. Even if they recognize you, it's just a memory response from before. The bond of the past has been overwritten by the data of the present. The reality of the desecration strikes Kim Yuta like a physical blow, his grip on his weapon faltering as his spirit begins to buckle. He stammered in a voice full of heartbreak, BBUT. Every fiber of his being recoiled at the sight of his friends being used as puppets for a goddess's amusement. A massive hand suddenly intervenes, catching the lethal strike meant for the boy with the casual ease of a man swatting a fly. Asura questioned with a voice like grinding stone, what are you doing, brat? The sovereign presence of the Fist King demands the boy's attention even in the middle of a slaughter. With effortless disdain, the martial god pins the resurrected puppet to the earth, his sheer pressure alone enough to crack the ground. Kim Yuta gasped in shock, AHJUSSI? Asura declared with a gaze that dismissed the horde as nothing more than dust, we've got no time to fight these cannon fodder. The dead were irrelevant to the king's true path. The Fist King's intent is a cold blade aimed at the heart of the goddess who dared to mock his status. Asura commanded with the authority of a sovereign, quickly, guide ME to the place where those damn towers are. He would bring the war to her doorstep, regardless of the system's rules. Kim Yuta stares in horror as Asura prepares to annihilate the remnants of his family without a second thought. He cried out in a desperate plea for mercy. What? No, wait a second. These people. RMYCOMRADES. The sentimentality of the weak was a concept the martial god had long ago discarded. Asura's eyes narrow, his gaze a piercing ray of martial truth that pierces through the boy's fragile hope. Asura questioned with cold disdain, COMRADES. Do they look like COMRADES to your eyes? To him, a warrior without a soul was nothing more than a broken tool. The horde of the dead stands before them, a macabre assembly of glitches and hollow armor that mocks the sanctity of life. Asura declared with the wisdom of a man who has seen 1,000 battlefields, they are merely the vengeful spirits of the dead. Clinging to vengeful spirits, change anything. The path of the strong leaves no room for the ghosts of the past. Turning his back on the emotional wreckage, the Fist King prepares to forge his own path through the goddess's domain, leaving the weak to their sentimentality. Asura declared with absolute arrogance, if you're CHOOSING to be this uselessly sentimental, then go ahead and play with these low-level GHOSDS for the rest of your life. I will find that damned woman by myself. The dummy players swarm, a tide of vengeful ghosts lunging at the being who mocks their very existence. Asura stands as a mountain amidst a storm of insignificant mobs, his shadow looming over the doomed data of the fallen. The air screams as they descend upon him. The ruins of the tower base erupt in a symphony of destruction as the Fist King moves with the speed of a divine strike. He shatters the puppets into digital dust with every collision, his strikes bypassing the system's defenses. It is a slaughter of data by the hand of a martial god. Asura crouches low, his presence alone warping the very reality of the tower base as he prepares to end the farce. Asura thought with a sovereign's pride. Ha! These damned ghosts dare to block this king's path? Even without his internal energy, his spirit is an unquenchable fire. His fist begins to glow with a terrifying intensity as he prepares to unleash a technique that defies the system's logic and the goddess's seal. Asura declared with a wild, bloodthirsty grin, fine, I'm busy, so I'll blow you all away at once. The time for games had ended. The world itself seems to pause as the martial god calls upon his ultimate legacy, his intent turning the air into a physical weight. He proclaimed his divine wrath, Fist King Asura style, destruction. The very name of the technique is a death warrant for everything in its path. A shockwave of pure physical pressure erupts, a force so absolute it renders the system's glitches silent and erases the horde of the dead. Asura stands amidst the settling dust, a lone king in a graveyard of his own making. The silence that follows is a tribute to his absolute power. Looking at his hands, the martial god realizes the true extent of the goddess's treachery and the depth of the seal she placed upon him. Asura thought with a cold realization, what is this? I can't feel any internal energy in my body. Could it be that she sealedmydantin? The source of his martial power had been locked away by a divine whim. Instead of fear, a dark, booming laughter erupts from the Fist King's throat, mocking the goddess's attempt to bind him. Asura laughed with a joy that promised divine retribution, amusing. This is quite amusing. How dare she try to test me? To him, a seal was just another barrier to be shattered by his will. He stands tall against the backdrop of the crumbling ruins, his spirit unbroken by the loss of his internal energy or the weight of the system. Asura thought with a god-tier confidence, however, no matter what you do, he would prove that a king's strength is not found in numbers or data. The last of the dummy players fall like wheat before a scythe, their very existence erased by a power that does not rely on the system's gifts or internal energy. Asura proclaimed with absolute certainty, "You cannot stop this king." The martial god had reclaimed his throne amidst the ruins of the tower. Asura continues his divine rampage, his fists moving with the speed of thought even as he rejects the very concept of martial techniques. He declared with absolute conviction, because even without a single martial art, every strike is a testament to his raw, sovereign power. Standing amidst the digital dust of his pulverized enemies, the martial god looms like a titan of old, unchallenged and supreme. Asura proclaimed with a voice like thunder that shook the heavens, "This king is still the strongest." The status window means nothing to a man who has transcended the limits of mortal flesh. His bloodlust remains unquenched, his gaze sweeping across the remaining legion of the dead with a predatory hunger. Asura asked with a wild, terrifying grin that promised only more slaughter, "Well then, shall I loosen up for the first time in a long while?" The base of the tower trembled at his intent. Another cataclysmic explosion of physical force shatters the ground, sending dummy players flying into the air like discarded toys in a god's tantrum. The sheer magnitude of his strength defies the tower's logic, a storm of divine wrath that leaves nothing but wreckage in its wake. Kim Yuta stares in paralyzed awe, his mind barely able to process the god-tier display of violence unfolding before his very eyes. He thought with a heart full of dread and respect, yes, expected, that man is a monster. To take on all those dummy players by himself. The gap between a player and a king had never been more apparent. The young warrior's eye narrows as he notices a chilling anomaly amidst the carnage, his battle instinct sensing a trap within the system. Kim Yuta whispered to himself with growing concern, but the celebration of victory was premature in this digital hell. Glitching purple energy begins to coalesce, knitting the shattered remains of the fallen back together in a grotesque display of system authority. The system's cold decree flashed across the void. Despite his overwhelming power, the dummy players are regening. Death was only a temporary state for the goddess's puppets. The nightmare is infinite, as more puppets rise from the earth with renewed hatred, their lifeless eyes fixed once more on their target. Kim Yuta thought with a soul-crushing realization, if this fight doesn't end, even he might eventually get exhausted. Even a martial god has limits when faced with eternity. Sparks of electrical energy begin to crackle around Kim Yuta's hands as he grips his weapon with newfound resolve, his spirit finally awakening. He declared with a spirit burning with the fire of a true warrior, "I have to help him." He would not stand by as his only hope was slowly ground down. Nova darts toward him, her small face filled with a frantic warning as she tries to restrain the boy's reckless impulse against the tide of the dead. Nova cried out with desperation, "Calm DOWN, YUDA." The path ahead was treacherous, and the chapter ends with the heroes standing on the precipice of a relentless war. Nova, the divine guide, cried out in desperate warning as the fabric of reality strained. She declared with frantic urgency, "With your stats gone, if you continue to use the holy sword recklessly, your body won't be able to handle it and you could die." Standing amidst the ruins of his past, Kim Yuta tightened his grip on the celestial blade. His response was cold, fueled by a weight only a survivor could carry. He thought with grim resolve, "I'm aware, Nova, but if I don't do this..." Before him, a fragment of his soul's agony whispered his name, Yuda. The ghost of his fallen comrade reached out, her form flickering like a dying ember. She pleaded with a voice from beyond the grave, "Yuda, let's climb the tower." Yuda. It was a cruel mockery of the bond they once shared, a data-driven ghost haunting the present. With a strike that shattered the silence of the heavens, Kim Yuta plunged his sword into the recycled soul. The impact was absolute, a mercy granted through violence as the holy light consumed the puppet of the system. Casting aside the remnants of his hesitation, the martial god's successor stared into the abyss of his own fury. His internal monologue burned with the intensity of a dying sun as he thought, "I won't be able to avenge my dead comrades." Kim Yuta watched as Nova hovered in the sky, a witness to his blood-soaked path. His intent was a cold blade aimed at the heavens. He swore an oath that shook the very foundation of the tower, "So no matter what happens, I will find her. The woman who did this to me and my comrades." The battlefield erupted as the hollow shells of his former allies surged forward. Kim Yuta roared his command to the legendary sovereign of fists, screaming, "AHJUSSI," as the puppets of the system closed in with mindless intent. With eyes burning like coals of divine wrath, Kim Yuta challenged the absolute power standing before him. He shouted with a voice of iron, "You can withstand this without dodging, right?" He was testing the limits of a god in the skin of a man. Asura stood unmoved, a mountain of primal force. Kim Yuta commanded the ancient warrior, "Keep drawing their aggro just like that." The Fist King's fist pulverized a dummy player as he muttered in disbelief, What? What are you talking about? That brat." The Sovereign of Fists unleashed a shockwave that decimated the recycled souls, his power making the system's puppets look like mere dust. Yet his pride was stung by the boy's audacity. Asura thought with a storm of irritation, "How dare he order me around?" Kim Yuta watched the carnage with the calculated gaze of a master tactician. He realized the opening created by the Fist King's overwhelming presence, observing with sharp focus, "Good. All the dummy's aggro has been drawn to him." Leaping high into the sky, silhouetted against the encroaching darkness, Kim Yuta prepared for the final strike. His declaration rang out like a death knell for his enemies, "Now's my chance." He descended like a falling star of judgment. The recycled souls of his comrades, hollow and void of the life they once held, looked up as death approached. They were nothing but data and memories now, trapped in a cycle of servitude to the system. Tears of blood and sorrow streamed down Kim Yuta's face as he prepared to erase the remains of those he loved. His heart broke with every word spoken in his mind. He whispered with agonizing regret, "I'm sorry, guys." The holy sword ignited with a brilliance that rivaled the sun. Kim Yuta's resolve crystallized into a final promise of vengeance. He roared, "Your revenge. I will definitely get it for you." The air screamed under the weight of his divine intent. The ultimate technique was unleashed. The holy sword of Asterion shone with the light of heavenly judgment, a pillar of pure, sanctified destruction that promised to cleanse the filth of the system from his comrades' souls. A cataclysmic explosion of light engulfed the battlefield, turning the recycled puppets into mere particles of light. It was a release, a violent end to a tragic cycle, dictated by the will of the martial god's heir. As the light faded, the Sovereign of Fists stood tall among the ruins, his presence unyielding even in the face of such divine power. Asura laughed with a mixture of amusement and respect, remarking, Good grief, that arrogant brat." Kim Yuta collapsed to his knees, his body trembling from the strain of wielding power far beyond his level. Asura looked down at him, the weight of his gaze alone enough to crush a lesser man. The Fist King spoke with a low, menacing tone, "You're quite useful after all, aren't you?" Gasping for air, his lungs burning with every breath, Kim Yuta looked up at the titan before him. He spoke with a voice that refused to break despite the exhaustion. He addressed the ancient warrior Ajasi, "Just keep one thing in mind." Drawing his sword one final time to steady his trembling body, Kim Yuta made his absolute claim. His eyes burned with an eternal coldness as he declared, "The one who kills that woman won't be you. It'll be me." A prophecy of blood and iron. As his strength finally failed him, Kim Yuta plummeted toward the earth. But before he could hit the dust, the massive hand of the Fist King caught him. Asura looked at the unconscious boy with a newfound interest, his warrior's spirit stirred by such audacity. The Sovereign of Fists erupted into a boisterous, earth-shaking laughter. His voice boomed across the desolate landscape as he shouted with savage joy, "This brat is less than dust. How dare you command me twice?" It was the laughter of a god who had found a worthy disciple. Kim Yuta lay unconscious, a shattered vessel of immense spirit. Asura stared at the boy who had dared to spark amusement in his ancient heart. With a grin that promised a journey through the deepest circles of hell, he declared, "Fine, I'll give you a reward for making me laugh." Lifting the limp boy as if weighing the very future of the tower, the Sovereign of Fists turned his eyes toward the vast horizon. This reward was no act of mercy, but a gateway of suffering. He spoke his decree with chilling authority, "If you ever become stronger than me, I'll give you the chance to kill her." With that, the stage was set for a training that would break the soul to forge a god. A panoramic vista of the untamed wilderness stretched before the Sovereign of Fists. Asura looked out upon the stage for his disciples' suffering and declared with a grin of savage anticipation, "I look forward to it." The ground groaned under the weight of a heavy, fur-lined boot. A presence moved through the shadows of the forest, ancient and foreboding, signaling the approach of a predator that didn't belong to this world system. From the jagged peaks, a figure of primitive terror emerged. Clad in heavy furs and crowned with a deer skull mask whose antlers pierced the sky, the antlered guardian stood as a sentinel of the old ways. He gripped his massive axe, a god-tier executioner waiting for a victim. The void within the skull's eye sockets ignited with a malevolent purple flame. A spark of divine wrath flickered in the darkness, sensing the arrival of those who dared to defy the towers. The scene shifted to a sanctuary of roaring water and sheer cliffs. A massive waterfall carved through the stone, a sight for a sovereign's meditation as the echoes of the training to come filled the canyon. Under the crushing weight of the falling torrent, Asura sat in ironclad stillness. His body, a roadmap of scars from 1,000 wars, absorbed the impact without a flinch. He was a god-tier martial artist seeking to reconnect with the primal power the system had tried to seal. Water droplets raced across his skin like insignificant mobs fleeing from his aura. Within the sovereign's eyes, a storm was brewing, a focused intent that looked past the physical world and into the very core of existence. With a sudden, violent motion, Asura shattered the waterfall's descent with a single strike. Rocks crumbled, and the water was forced back by the sheer pressure of his will. He was a force of nature reclaiming his throne. The Sovereign of Fists looked at his clenched hand, his voice a low rumble beneath the roar of the falls. Asura thought with cold disdain for his current state, as I thought. I cannot feel even a trace of internal energy. His jaw tightened, a predator insulted by the chains of a weak system. Asura declared with a pride that could level mountains to dare seal my Danshan. How bold. The martial god's fury was a slow-burning fire. Glancing toward the exhausted form of his disciple, the Sovereign considered his options. Asura thought with the weight of ancient wisdom, since it has come to this, I suppose I have no choice. The training was about to descend into true hell. A heavy kick slammed into Kim Yuta, forcing the breath from his lungs. Asura bellowed with a voice of iron, how long do you plan on lying there like that? The boy gasped in sudden pain, crying out, "Ack," as he was dragged back into the fray. The force of the impact sent debris flying through the air. The earth itself seemed to recoil from the Sovereign's presence, a violent reminder that for the martial god, even a simple awakening was a display of absolute dominance. Springing to his feet, Kim Yuta drew his sword, his eyes filled with a survivor's desperation and a growing rage. He snarled at his tormentor, "Why, you muscle-brained gorilla? You're finally showing your true colors." The disciple was beginning to snap. Asura watched the boy's outburst with a look of bored indifference, as if observing a frantic insect. He declared with chilling calm, "Fine, let's go at it properly one more time." He thought with cold disdain. It seems this brat still hasn't learned his lesson. Do you truly wish for death? The Sovereign's gaze hardened, the weight of his ancient intent pressing down on the clearing. Asura declared with grim purpose, "I have no time to leisurely spar with you. I must destroy those damned towers as quickly as possible, so get up at once." The hunt for their creator had begun. Kim Yuta's face twisted into a sardonic grin, his voice dripping with disbelief at the Sovereign's blunt logic. He replied with mocking laughter, "What? El Mao? Why would I go around destroying towers with you, Ajasi? Besides, instead of destroying perfectly good towers, shouldn't we focus on finding where that woman is?" The air vibrated with the Sovereign's sudden outburst. Asura roared with a fury that silenced the forest. "You fool, do you still not understand?" He was a god trying to explain reality to a mortal. Nova hovered in shock as Kim Yuta recoiled from the sheer force of the Sovereign's words. Asura continued his tirade, his voice echoing like thunder. "That wench is undoubtedly hiding inside a tower. This wretched world consists of nothing but the towers that bitch created." A manic light burned in the Sovereign's eyes, a vision of global destruction for the sake of one kill. Asura declared with terrifying resolve, "If we smash every tower in this world, we will surely find and kill her." To him, the world was merely collateral damage. Kim Yuta and Nova exchanged a look of shared exhaustion and disbelief. The disciple responded with a hollow tone, "Ah, is that so?" In the silence of his mind, he thought with weary certainty, "This guy has completely lost it." Nova leaned in, her small voice a frantic whisper as she tried to reason with Kim Yuta. The divine guide whispered with wide-eyed fear, "Yuta, it seems. That man is far too dangerous." She could see the storm that followed the Sovereign. The fairy continued her desperate warning, her words tumbling out in a rush of anxiety. Nova whispered, "I mean, he just destroyed your stat window without a second thought. If you stay with him, who knows what kind of disaster might." Her fear was palpable. The massive presence of the Sovereign loomed behind them, his awareness transcending their hushed whispers. Asura demanded with a low, dangerous growl, "Hey, you shrimpy brat, what are you whispering about?" Nova shrieked in terror, "Kayak," as the martial god's scrutiny fell upon her. Turning away with arms crossed, Asura spoke with a pride that barely masked his grudging acceptance of their alliance. The Sovereign declared with cold disdain, "It's not as if I enjoy traveling with you lot either. It's just that your swordsmanship seems somewhat useful, brat." He paused, leaving the air thick with the unspoken weight of their shared objective. Kim Yuta looked at the Sovereign with eyes that had witnessed the downfall of worlds. Asura continued, his voice carrying the immense weight of their shared burden as he declared, "Besides, aren't you just like me? Aren't you also hunting for that woman?" Asura turned his gaze toward Kim Yuta, his silhouette a testament to primal raw power. He spoke a truth that was absolute and indisputable. "That being said, catching her is impossible, not with those pathetic, weak physical bodies of yours." To him, weakness was the only true sin. Standing atop the jagged stone like a conqueror of fate, the Sovereign of Fists unleashed a decree that shook the very air. Asura declared with god-tier authority, "From this moment forward, I shall strengthen your bodies." The training of the martial god was about to begin. Deep within the emerald embrace of the forest, a bizarre and monolithic structure pierced the heavens. It was a tower of blocky, modern design, an alien scar on the landscape created by the woman who sought to stabilize this glitched world. A pair of travel-worn boots came to a halt on the forest floor. A voice whispered with a mixture of relief and trepidation, "Finally, we've arrived." The destination was in sight, but the true trial had only just started. Asura stared at the geometric nightmare before them, his eyes narrowed with divine wrath. He questioned the nature of the structure, asking with a low growl, "Is this one of the towers she created?" The Sovereign looked back, acknowledging the transformation of those who had followed him into the abyss of his training. Asura remarked with a rare sliver of approval, "Regardless, you have grown remarkably over these past few days." He gazed upon Nova, the fairy guide whose form had been sculpted into a vessel of raw, rippling muscle. Asura declared with the arrogance of a master, with your current physique, you might actually be of some minor assistance to me. To be considered even a minor assistance by the Fist King was an honor beyond measure. Nova, now a towering bodybuilder of divine proportions, struck a pose of martial respect. She bellowed with a voice full of newfound strength, "Thank you, master." Her gray hair flowed like a banner of her evolution. Asura continued to assess her progress, his ancient wisdom seeing the potential beneath the raw power. He noted with a satisfied hum, "You certainly have talent. Had there been more time, you might have even been able to properly train your internal energy." Nova responded with humble enthusiasm, crying out, "Not at all. This is all thanks to your teachings, master. Haha." The sovereign's patience began to fray like a worn rope. He looked back at the path they had carved through the wilderness and asked with growing irritation, "But as for this brat, when is he going to arrive?" His focus was on the one who still struggled to keep pace. Watching as Nova flexed her divine muscles in the background, Asura looked at the lagging disciple with pure, unadulterated disdain. He declared with a voice that cut like a blade, to be inferior to one's own servant. How truly pathetic. To the sovereign, there was no greater shame than stagnation. Limping into the clearing, Kim Yuta looked more like a ghost than a man. He leaned heavily on a makeshift staff, his breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. He managed to wheeze out the words, I'm coming. Just give me a second." The physical toll of the training was written in every line of his exhausted face. Flashbacks of the hellish training haunted Kim Yuta's mind. He had been forced to sprint across the landscape while carrying a massive, waterlogged tree trunk on his shoulders. He roared with the last of his strength, "These lunatics. How the hell do you expect me to run while carrying a log?" Every fiber of Kim Yuta's being screamed in protest as he looked toward the horizon. His internal monologue was a storm of disbelief and misery. He thought with wide-eyed shock, is this some kind of boot camp? The martial god's methods were beyond human comprehension. The most baffling transformation was that of his fairy companion. Nova flexed her double biceps with a manic grin, her gray hair tied back as her body rippled with impossible power. Kim Yuta's thoughts were a chaotic mess of confusion. And why on earth did Nova change like that? Front double biceps. She's become a completely different person. Is she on steroids? The survivor finally hit his limit, collapsing face first into the dirt. His mind was a fatting spark as he thought with absolute exhaustion, I can't take another step. I can't move anymore. He was a broken vessel before the unyielding mountain that was Asura. Asura looked down at the pile of misery that was his disciple, his expression one of bored disappointment. He muttered with a voice as cold as a winter tomb, "Pathetic brat. You managed to catch up barely." The gap between them was an ocean of power. Turning his attention back to the structure, the Sovereign of Fists appraised the architectural anomaly. Asura remarked with a frown of genuine confusion, "Anyway, what a bizarre-looking tower. It looks even more bizarre than the tower I destroyed last time." To him, it was merely another obstacle to be pulverized. Nova, standing tall in her newfound muscular glory, gazed at the tower with the readiness of a seasoned warrior. She asked with respectful curiosity, "Master, shall we enter the tower now?" Asura swept his gaze over the smooth, seamless walls, continuing his silent evaluation. Nova added, "I can't seem to find anything that looks like an entrance." A dark and terrible amusement flickered across the Sovereign's face. He looked at the structure with the eyes of a destroyer, his voice dropping into a sinister, melodic tone. Asura declared with a grin that promised cataclysm, "No entrance is necessary, my disciple." The air began to thrum with the buildup of the Fist King's concentrated will. He raised a hand toward the tower, his voice an ultimatum to the world itself. Asura stated with absolute finality, "If I just destroy this damn tower right here, that'll be the end of it." The laws of the tower were about to be broken by raw force. Nova erupted with enthusiastic support, flexing her muscles and cheering for the impending destruction. She bellowed with a fanatical grin, "Oh, that's my master for you. Go ahead and smash that tower in a single blow." She had fully embraced the path of the martial god. Kim Yuta, still sprawled in the dirt, looked up with a face etched in pure, unadulterated panic. He saw the disaster brewing and scrambled to find his voice against the weight of the Sovereign's aura. He shouted in a desperate plea for sanity, "What? Wait a minute. Let's think about this a bit more carefully first." But the survivor's warning meant nothing to a god who knew only destruction. The plea was silenced by a strike that defied the very physics of existence. The Sovereign's fist connected with the tower, a deafening roar of shattering stone and glitched energy signaling the end of the system's order. Reality itself screamed as crimson warning boxes bled into the sky, declaring in a digital frenzy, "Error! Error! A fatal error has occurred." The martial god had broken the system, and now the world itself began to unravel into a maelstrom of chaos. Surrounded by a maelstrom of chaotic purple energy, the Sovereign of Fists remained a pillar of unyielding power. Asura looked into the heart of the system's glitch, his eyes burning with the light of a god who had just shattered the world's logic. The tower's automated defenses shrieked in digital agony as a crimson warning manifested. The system declared, forced transport to the tower's interior initiated. Kim Yuta was caught in the celestial vacuum, his voice a piercing scream of terror, "AAAAH." Kim Yuta was swept into the void, his body flailing against the weightless terror of the forced transport. He roared at the Sovereign with the fury of a man who had seen too many disasters, screaming, "Are you out of your mind? That's why I told you we should think carefully first." The world shifted into a nightmare of concrete and steel. A panoramic view of a dead metropolis unfolded, where skeletal skyscrapers leaned like tombstones against a bruised and silent sky. It was a city of ghosts, an urban apocalypse trapped within the tower's glitched geometry. A sudden eruption of violent light tore through the silence of the ruined streets. Kim Yuta's voice echoed through the concrete canyons in a desperate cry of pain, AAAGH, as they were unceremoniously spat out of the system's vortex. Landing hard on the shattered pavement, Kim Yuta retched from the sheer disorientation of the journey. He gasped out, BLARGH? Standing tall amidst the wreckage, Asura scanned the modern landscape with a look of pure, ancient confusion, demanding, now what are these hideous buildings? Nova stared at her hands in a panic as her muscular form vanished, regressing back into her small, fragile fairy self. She wailed for her lost strength, whispering through tears, Sob, no, my muscles, they're gone. Kim Yuta looked around, his eyes wide with shock as he asked the void, Where on earth are we? The survivor stared at the leaning towers of glass and steel, a ghost of a familiar world haunting his vision. Kim Yuta's internal monologue was a frantic storm of hope and dread as he thought, this is a city? Could it be? Have I returned to my original world? Nova pointed a trembling finger toward the shadows of the nearby alleyways, her voice a frantic warning. She shrieked, Why, Yuta? Look over there. Kim Yuta turned, his breath catching in his throat as the true horror of this place began to reveal itself. Piles of human remains littered the asphalt, a silent graveyard of those who had come before. Kim Yuta looked upon the slaughter and whispered with a voice of leaden despair, Are those the corpses of players? Why are there so many bodies? It was a garbage dump for souls. The realization of the tower's cruelty struck Kim Yuta with the force of a divine blow. His mind raced as he looked at the alien structures, thinking with cold certainty, regardless of how this happened, this is not the world I used to live in. Then just where in the world is this? A voice like the rattling of dry bones echoed through the street, a command that pulsed with necrotic energy. The hidden master of this domain spoke with absolute authority, heed my call. The air turned cold with the smell of death. Purple miasma erupted from the piles of corpses, the souls of the dead being wrenched from their final rest. Ghostly flames licked the ruined skyscrapers as the spirits of fallen players began to gather in a frantic, agonized swarm. Asura watched the rising souls with a warrior's indifference, his presence a dark mountain in the middle of the spectral storm. Kim Yuta watched in horror, his thoughts racing, the souls of the dead gathering in one place. The spirits coalesced into a singular, terrifying mass. High above the street, a pair of modern, polished shoes floated on the necrotic wind. The Spectre King observed the new arrivals and whispered with cold curiosity, How intriguing. Floating effortlessly above the ruined world, a young man in a long black coat looked down at the sovereign and his disciple. The Spectre King asked with an arrogant tilt of his head, Are these the newly SUMMONED? Players? He looked upon them as mere insects for his amusement. The ruler of the dead drifted closer, his eyes glowing with an ancient, predatory intent. The Spectre King declared with chilling finality, I'll tell you now, do not attempt a futile resistance. No matter how much you struggle. He spoke with the confidence of a god in his own temple. Asura narrowed his eyes, his gaze locking onto the arrogant figure in the sky. The Spectre King continued his lecture on despair, his voice a smooth blade of shadow, the only one who can reach. He had not yet sensed the tsunami of divine wrath standing before him. The Spectre King raised his hand, his fingers dancing through the air as purple necrotic energy flowed from his palm. He was weaving the very fabric of death to serve his whims. From the concentrated souls of 1,000 players, a massive and terrifying skeletal form began to emerge. The Spectre King made his absolute claim to the heavens, declaring, the top of this tower is me. Spectre King? The nightmare of the dead had taken its final form. Kim Yuta recoiled in sheer terror, his eyes wide as he beheld the monstrosity summoned from the piles of corpses. He whispered with a trembling voice, a skeleton? No, that thing's on an entirely different level. The scale of the threat was beyond anything he had faced before. The giant skeleton unleashed a silent, soul-crushing roar. Its massive skull, illuminated by the hellish purple light of its own eyes, loomed over the ruined street. It was an engine of destruction, a sentinel of the Spectre King's divine wrath. The chapter reaches its climax as the god of martial arts and the king of ghosts prepare for a collision that will shatter the ruined city. The sovereign of fists tightened his grip on the air itself, ready to show this Spectre King the meaning of true power. The archive is closed, for now. Asura stands tall before a towering monstrosity of bone. Behind him, Kim Yuta shouted with desperate urgency, Old man, it's dangerous, get out of the way. The Fist King offered only a smirk of cold disdain, his spirit unshaken by the titan before him. Asura declared with absolute arrogance, HMPH, you called a mere monster like this a danger to me. With a sudden, explosive surge of power, the Fist King moved. A whirlwind of divine wrath struck the undead colossus, bone and shadow shattering under his sheer martial might. The impact was absolute. The earth groaned as the giant skeleton was torn asunder, reduced to mere dust and fragments by a force that defied the laws of the system. Amidst the settling debris, Asura stood unyielding, his presence dominating the battlefield. He spat his contempt toward his unseen foe, muttering with cold disdain, pathetic piece of trash. He looked down at the remnants of the summon, his eyes burning with the fire of a sovereign who had seen the heights of power. Asura questioned with a voice like thunder, "To think you'd face me with just this much, and yet dare claim you are the one to reach the pinnacle." His gaze pierced through the smoke, finding the one who pulled the strings from the shadows. Asura shouted with a righteous fury, "How arrogant and pathetic! You coward hiding behind a monster!" From the gloom emerged the one who dared challenge the legend. His eyes glowed with a sinister purple light as he processed the insult. Spectre King whispered with a chilling calm, "Me, hiding behind a monster." Around him, the air bled with dark energy, summoning forth more abominations from the abyss. Spectre King stood amidst his ghastly legion, declaring with cold intent, "What a curious thing to say. I've changed my mind. You keep struggling until the bitter end." The darkness deepened, a storm of souls swirling around the successor of the tower. Spectre King looked upon his prey and decreed, "I shall see just how long you can survive. I'll put you to the test." The summoner's power continued to swell, his aura expanding like a shroud of death over the ruins. Spectre King repeated his dark vow with even greater conviction. "What a curious thing to say. I've changed my mind. You keep struggling until the bitter end." His expression remained a mask of icy indifference as he prepared to unleash hell upon the Fist King. Spectre King finalized his decree once more, "I shall see just how long you can survive. I'll put you to the test." On his command, the shadows lunged. Werewolves and skeletons, creatures of nightmare and bone, swarmed forward to consume the one who dared mock their master. Asura's eyes narrowed, his martial soul reacting to the escalating threat. He repeated the word with a dangerous edge in his voice, "Test." He shifted his stance, his muscles coiling like serpents of iron, ready to strike down the insignificant mobs. Asura declared with sovereign pride, "A lowly thing like you dares to face me." He tore through the initial wave of undead with a single, sweeping blow, his strength absolute. Asura shouted amidst the carnage, and say, "You'll test me." Suddenly, a higher tier of horror manifested. A hooded specter, its hollow sockets burning with a malevolent flame, clutching chains forged in the darkest pits. Purple chains, imbued with the power of soul absorption, lashed out with supernatural speed, weaving a web of entrapment around the Fist King. The chains tightened, their cold grip biting into his legendary frame. Asura let out a gasp of genuine surprise as he found his movements momentarily hindered. Huh! Seizing the opportunity, a massive white werewolf, its maw dripping with hunger, lunged through the air toward the vulnerable warrior. A deafening roar filled the air as the beast struck, a massive cloud of dust and rubble erupting from the point of impact. The werewolf's claws raked across the space, yet its eyes widened in shock as it met a resistance it could not overcome. White streaks of energy flared as its attack was met with an immovable force. Asura remained standing, the chains still binding him, but the beast's attack was nothing more than a nuisance. He mocked the creature's futile effort, declaring with absolute power, "That tickles." The Spectre King's mastery over the tower's rules manifested once more, his intent cold and absolute. A glowing system window ignited the air before Asura's unyielding eyes, signaling the activation of a forbidden ritual. Summon. From the digital abyss, the first wave of the nightmare began to tear through reality. The system confirmed the manifestation of the vanguard, skeleton soldier. A tide of bone rose to bury the Fist King, serving as a mere prelude to the deeper horrors the summoner was about to unleash from the void. The Spectre King reached further into the abyss, his dark energy pulsating as a new system window manifested. Summon. From the tears in reality, a terrifying legion emerged to drown the world, the Abyssal Horde. Asura stood amidst the rising tide, his expression unreadable as he faced the sheer scale of the system's malice. Asura planted his feet firmly onto the shattered asphalt, a sovereign preparing for the coming storm. The weight of his martial presence cracked the earth beneath his boots as he coiling his power for the inevitable clash. The Abyssal Horde descended like a gray wave of death, a swarm of insignificant mobs attempting to overwhelm the martial god through sheer numbers. Asura stood at the eye of the hurricane, a mountain of iron that refused to budge before the tide of the system's puppets. Through the swarm, a massive red beast lunged, its gargantuan fist threatening to pulverize anything in its path. Asura did not flinch, his ancient wisdom seeing through the clumsy brutality of the monster as it prepared to strike. The Red Titan's blow landed with the force of a falling star, yet Asura met the impact with a punch of his own. The resulting shockwave cleared the streets, a clash of divine martial power against the raw, mindless strength of the abyss. Not content with mere strength, the nameless player invoked a darker authority. The system flickered with a new summon, Shackle Wraith. Purple hands erupted from the shadows, ghostly appendages reaching out to bind the Fist King in an inescapable grasp. Bound by the spectral chains, Asura felt the shifting reality of the tower's rules. He muttered with disbelief at the unfolding absurdity. What? From the ruins, the nameless player watched the struggle with a cold, analytical gaze. He declared with absolute certainty, "I can't understand." Searching for logic within the chaos, the nameless player stared at the warrior before him. He thought with growing confusion, "I don't sense any stats, or even any skills." Asura turned his head, his eyes narrowing as he listened to the summoner's words. The summoner continued, his voice trembling with sheer disbelief. How can you possibly possess such overwhelming power?" The summoner stepped forward, his twin daggers wreathed in violet flames that defied the very perception of the system. He stood his ground, ready to challenge the Fist King Asura himself, his eyes burning with a storm of divine wrath. The nameless player looked upon Asura as nothing more than a soul to be harvested. He proclaimed with chilling indifference, "No need to answer. I'll absorb your soul and verify it myself." A blinding flare of pure authority erupted as Kim Yuta unleashed his strike. A cross of violet light tore through the darkness, a sovereign rejection of the rules that sought to bind him. With the sheer force of a god-tier ritual, the summoner lunged forward, his blades carving a path of total destruction. Channeling the power of an ancient soul, he bellowed the name of his ultimate technique, Brand of Extinction. The backlash of such overwhelming power racked Kim Yuta's level 1 body. He grunted in agony as his muscles screamed under the divine strain, KUGH. Exhausted and reeling, Kim Yuta marveled at the aftermath of his own wrath. He thought with shock, what is that insane destructive power, to think he's fighting on equal footing with that man in a one-on-one? Through Kim Yuta's eyes, the summoner stood amidst the swirling smoke and falling ash, a silhouette of terror to any who dared to watch. With a mounting sense of dread, Yuta thought, just what kind of monster is this guy? Nova gripped Kim Yuta's collar, her small face pale with terror as she sensed the shifting nature of their enemy. She cried out with desperate urgency, run away, YUDA. The fairy companion stared into the abyss of the nameless player's aura, realizing the truth. Nova warned with a trembling voice that is no longer anything like a player. I don't know why, but I can clearly feel it. A vision of an ancient and terrifying presence flickered in Nova's mind. She thought with a dawning horror, that person. The realization hit her with the force of a divine decree. Nova declared with terror, is EMANATING a power just like Goddess Eshua? Silence fell over the ruined city as the dust settled, the skyscrapers standing like tombstones in the twilight. The air itself seemed to hold its breath in the presence of such overwhelming power. The nameless player stepped over the rubble, his eyes scanning the carnage for the missing piece of his puzzle. He mused with cold calculation, is this finally the last soul? Surrounded by his ghastly legion, the antagonist savored the silence following his triumph. With the weight of 10,000 souls nearly within his grasp, he declared with chilling satisfaction, he was a troublesome one. But with this, the contract with Goddess Eshua is over. The successor of the tower raised a hand wreathed in dark, absolute power, his gaze fixated on the final sacrifice. He prepared to invoke his dark legacy, his voice cold as the grave as he identified his sovereign role, nameless player. The system pulsed with a malevolent light, signaling the activation of a forbidden power, authority, soul absorption. The nameless player gazed upon his prey with eyes devoid of humanity, declaring with chilling intent, your soul, I shall put it to good use. Asura did not wait for the ritual to conclude. With a roar that shook the foundations of the tower, the martial god lunged forward, his sheer physical presence tearing through the spectral mist. He moved with a speed that defied the system's tracking, a sovereign force of nature unleashed. The impact from the Fist King's movement sent shockwaves rippling through the area, yet the nameless player remained motionless, his face a mask of cold arrogance. He gazed at his opponent with a mixture of curiosity and disdain upon hearing the mention of his divine benefactor. Asura growled, did you just mention a goddess? Asura bared his teeth, the mere mention of the deity igniting a primordial fury within his soul. He demanded with a voice like grinding stones, are you perhaps referring to the one who SCALEDMYDANTIAN, that damned woman? The nameless player's eyes narrowed, spotting a clear path to his goal through the martial god's erupting fury. Asura continued, his voice heavy with intent. I happens to be looking for that woman as well. It seems this turn of events actually works in my favor. A storm of killing intent erupted from Asura, the air itself thickening with his divine pressure. He delivered his ultimatum with sovereign authority, unless you have a death wish, tell me where she is. The nameless player offered a mocking smirk, the threat of death seemingly irrelevant to one who held the tower's keys. He replied with chilling confidence, sure. This wouldn't end that easily anyway. With a wave of his hand, the nameless player summoned a storm of ethereal blades, each wreathed in violet flames. He stood at the eye of the storm, declaring with absolute arrogance, however, don't be mistaken. The one dying in this tower isn't me. The violet daggers hung in the air, 1,000 points of cold death aimed directly at the martial god. The nameless player finalized his decree with icy finality, but you. The blades descended in a torrential downpour of steel and shadow. Asura became a blur of motion, his hands moving with the precision of a master as he deflected the system's weapons with his bare skin, each impact ringing out like a temple bell. In a display of god-tier martial skill, Asura caught a flying dagger between two fingers, the violet flame flickering uselessly against his iron grip. He offered a grunt of dismissive contempt, HMPH. The Fist King continued his dance of destruction, evading the swarming horde with effortless grace before reflecting a dagger straight back at the nameless player. Surprise flickered across the nameless player's face as he realized the sheer scale of the power he was facing. The data he relied on failed to account for a will that could shatter the tower's own logic. A massive pillar of violet energy erupted from the dagger Asura reflected, slamming into a building and shattering it to pieces like a direct hit from an artillery shell. The very foundations of the world groaned under the crushing weight of their combat. Emerging from the dust, the nameless player let out a dry, mirthless laugh. He acknowledged the threat with chilling respect. "Ha, you're truly an absurd fellow." The antagonist gripped his daggers tighter, the violet aura around them intensifying as he prepared to unleash his true strength. The nameless player declared with cold conviction, "I will no longer deny it. You are certainly strong, and now I shall take you as seriously as your strength." The system shrieked as a legendary gear manifested. Authority, armor of Hades. Purple armor fused with the nameless player's frame, his eyes glowing with the baleful light of the underworld as his stats reached a tier that defied measurement. The armored successor lunged with the speed of a thunderbolt, his violet-clad blades carving through the air. Asura stood his ground, his muscles coiling like serpents of iron as he prepared to meet the onslaught head-on. Steel met soul in a deafening clash of absolute powers. The nameless player and Asura traded blows that could level mountains, each strike a testament to their absolute rejection of the rules that sought to bind them. The nameless player's face twisted into a mask of maniacal glee as he pressed his attack, his blades a blur of violet destruction. He shouted with fanatic zeal, "Try and take this." An explosion of violet fire and martial pressure engulfed the battlefield, tearing the very sky asunder. The shockwave leveled the surrounding buildings, leaving only two titans standing amidst the ruins of a dying world. Asura looked at his opponent with a gaze of absolute superiority, his breathing steady despite the chaos. He questioned with a mocking smirk, "Is that all, brat?" Still fueled by the adrenaline of facing a worthy opponent, his eyes burned with a dark, unyielding resolve. He snarled with a fury that defied his approaching end. "Not yet." The nameless player lunged back into the vortex of violence, his armored strikes fueled by a frantic, desperate hatred. His soul burned with the weight of his divine contract, pushing his vessel to ignore the crushing limits of his own mortality. Asura merely shifted his weight, his presence expanding until it eclipsed the very heavens. He looked upon the struggling successor with the cold finality of a god's judgment and spoke with terrifying authority, "Indeed, you're correct. You are far from it." The foundations of the world buckled under the weight of their sovereign clash. Asura pressed his advantage, his voice a thunderclap amidst the storm of violet steel. He declared with absolute dominance, "The gap in power between you and me." A blinding pillar of energy erupted from the point of impact, an explosion of divine martial wrath that leveled the surrounding cityscape. The air screamed as the sheer force of the Fist King's blow tore through the laws of the system itself. Amidst the settling dust and smoke, the nameless player emerged, his form wreathed in dark aura. He let out a chilling, mirthless laugh that echoed through the ruins. The successor of the tower whispered with sinister glee, "Ha, ha. The antagonist gripped his daggers, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light as he acknowledged the strength of the martial god. The nameless player declared with a haunting grin, "Ha. Yes, you really are strong, at least for now." Watching from the sidelines, Kim Yuta gritted his teeth, sweat dripping from his brow as he realized the true scale of the horror unfolding before him. The nameless player turned his attention toward the legends of the old world and stated with chilling calm, "Let me tell you one thing." Asura listened in grim silence as the villain began to unveil the origins of his dark authority. The nameless player spoke of the divine entity that reigned over the tower, questioning with mocking intent. "Did you say you were looking for Goddess Eshua? Goddess Eshua is the very person who gave me this tower." The darkness around the successor thickened, his gaze piercing through the martial god. He revealed the missing piece of his absolute power, declaring with cold calculation, however, "I haven't obtained all of the tower's authority yet." Standing amidst the rubble of the city he sought to rule, the nameless player proclaimed the terms of his unholy ritual. He raised his arms as if embracing the apocalypse, stating with fanatic resolve, "So I made a contract with Goddess Eshua to offer the souls of 10,000 players, so I can be reborn as the true successor of the tower." With a sudden, terrifying blur of motion, the antagonist reached out and snatched a small, glowing form from the air. He looked at Nova, the 10,000th soul, and laughed with triumph. The nameless player declared his victory, "And with this, I've finally acquired every soul." Horror flooded Kim Yuta's face as he watched his companion being captured by the monster in human skin. He screamed with a soul-wrenching desperation, "No, Nova, damn it! When did he?" Fueled by a righteous fury, Kim Yuta lunged forward, his daggers wreathed in the purple flames of his divine wrath. He roared at the kidnapper, his voice cracking with rage, "You bastard! What are you doing to Nova?" The nameless player didn't even bother to look back as he commanded his ghastly minions to deal with the nuisance. He dismissed the protagonist's struggle with chilling disdain, declaring with absolute power, "Small fry should stay out of this." A hulking monstrosity emerged from the shadows, striking Kim Yuta with a blow that shattered his ribs and sent him reeling. Blood sprayed across the ruins as the hero let out a strangled cry of agony, cough, ACK. Pinned to the ground, Kim Yuta struggled to breathe, the copper taste of his own blood filling his mouth. From above him, the nameless player looked down with pitiless eyes and decreed, "It's useless to stop me." Surrounded by an army of skeletons, orcs, and vengeful spirits, The successor of the tower stood triumphant over the broken hero. He declared the end of the struggle with sovereign finality. There's nothing you can do now. The system flickered, confirming the completion of the dark ritual that would change the world forever. A notification appeared in the void. Quest succession ritual acquired the final 10,000 TH soul. The final lock was turning, the tower's absolute power within the antagonist's reach. The system announced the inevitable full authority of the tower will soon be unlocked. Time remaining until unlock 000104. Asura stood amidst the ruins, his gaze fixed on the man who had mastered the arts of death. He identified the villain's ancient lineage with a voice of pure authority. Upon looking ATYOU, you're a spirit master who MANIPULATES vengeful SPIRITS. The martial god's eyes burned with a righteous disdain for the path his enemy had chosen. Asura spoke of a kingdom long lost and a scum that never changed, declaring with sovereign contempt, there were occasionally those who used such lowly ARTS in MY kingdom as well. Wicked unorthodox scum. To think I would see those despicable ARTS again here. Asura prepares to unleash a forbidden technique, his hand glowing with an eerie, divine green light. He mutters with cold disdain, normally I wouldn't use such filthy arts, but since you've crossed the line far too much, I shall show you properly. The Fist King stands like a pillar of heaven, his power transcending the mere rules of this world. Watch closely, he commands with absolute authority, for you are about to witness the power of true spirit arts. The very air trembles as the souls of the fallen are caught in a celestial vortex. What is this? The hierarchy of the system screams in confusion as Asura seizes control of the essence itself. Lee Chanwu stares into the abyss as the villain's shock resonates through the spectral plane. He feels his grip slipping, his voice trembling in disbelief as he realizes the souls I gathered are being stolen by him. Below, Kim Yuta's physical shell lies broken and bleeding, a testament to the villain's cruelty. Lee Chanwu's mind recoils in shock, gasping in horror, and no way. Such a thing shouldn't be possible within the system. The martial god stands as a shepherd of souls, his presence looming over Kim Yuta and Nova. With an authoritative roar that echoes through the ruins, he releases them. Now run wild to your heart's content, brats. Nova's spectral form ignites with a cold, ethereal fire. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now burn with the reflected wrath of a god. Asura declares with cold finality, from now on, it's your turn. Kim Yuta's soul hardens, his intent sharp enough to cut through the fabric of the tower itself. He looks upon his tormentor with freezing hatred, his purpose absolute, to crush that damned wretch. Lee Chanwu stares at his empty hands, the 10,000 souls he sacrificed everything for disappearing like mist in a storm. The souls I gathered, he whispers, his arrogance turning into ash. The successor of the tower is struck by a wave of pure terror as his grand ritual is dismantled by a force he cannot quantify. Are being stolen by that bastard. He shouts, his world crumbling. In no way, something like this shouldn't be possible in the system. Asura remains unmoved by the villain's screams, his massive frame radiating an aura of absolute dominance. He watches over his young disciples as they prepare to unleash the forbidden. Now, run wild to your heart's content, brats. The two souls stand ready, their power magnified by Asura's divine intervention. Nova whispers the beginning of the end, from now on it's your turn, while Kim Yuta vows with lethal intent to crush that damned wretch. Kim Yuta gazes at his translucent palms, his mind struggling to grasp his new state of existence. Huh, he mutters, feeling the strange, weightless power coursing through his ethereal form. Panic begins to seep into the young warrior's heart as he realizes the gravity of his situation. What's going on? He cries out in desperation. Don't tell me. Am I dead? Kim Yuta turns his fury toward the man who claims to be his master. Uncle, you did this, didn't you? Give me back my body right now, he shouts, pointing at his motionless corpse lying in the dust. Asura's expression remains as stern as a mountain, his voice a thunderous rebuke to the boy's ignorance. You fool, who do you think you're blaming? He growls. If you had stayed in that state, your body would have perished long ago. The Fist King explains the treacherous nature of their enemy's magic with cold precision. The reason your souls left your bodies was not my doing, but entirely that bastard's work. That damned wretch used spirit arts to try and turn your souls into puppets. He points to the physical shell of Kim Yuta, lying helplessly as the villain's curse attempted to take hold. So I made his spirit arts my own to block him, Asura reveals. By separating your souls from your flesh, I allowed your bodies to recover slowly, so stop your prattling and obey my command. A shadow of a smirk plays on the martial god's face as he looks toward the fatting power of Lee Chanwu. I have stolen quite a few of the souls he controlled, Asura notes with satisfaction, so he's no longer worth much. Kim Yuta clenches his spectral fist, trying to sense the magnitude of this transformation. Even if he say it's the power of spirit arts, he thinks skeptically, his eyes scanning his glowing form, it doesn't feel like much has changed. But the martial god will not tolerate hesitation. With a command that shakes the very foundations of the tower, he orders them forward. Now, brats, show him clearly the true power of spirit arts. Lee Chanwu recovers from his initial shock, his eyes glowing with a sinister purple malice. You stole some souls and think I'm not worth much? He sneers, his arrogance flaring up once more. The villain strides forward, surrounded by a tide of dark energy that defies the natural order. Enough bullshit, he declares with cold disdain, his intent dripping with lethal venom. From the depths of the ruined city, a legion of the damned rises to serve their master. I don't know how you managed to steal those souls, Li Chanwu admits, his voice resonating with a cold, hollow power. A sea of skeletal warriors, eyes burning with abyssal fire, swarms the battlefield in an overwhelming display of force. But those you took, the villain declares with soaring arrogance, are nothing but a drop in the bucket. Did you say the true power of spirit arts? Li Chanwu questioned with a sneer, his voice dripping with arrogance as his skeletal legion surged around him. With just 2 people, how absurd. Asura threw his head back and let out a boisterous laugh that echoed through the ruins like the cackle of a madman. Ha, just 2 people, he barked, his voice booming over the gargantuan scale of the legion he had summoned. Asura declared with cold disdain, his gaze unyielding against the sea of bone. You still judge strength by such numbers. At that moment, Kim Yuta lunged forward, his blade igniting with the ethereal power of the martial god's teachings. A thunderous impact shattered the silence as a skeletal warrior was pulverized into dust. The air screamed with the force of the strike, the raw energy of the spirit arts tearing through the undead ranks. The slaughter continued without mercy. Another monster was carved apart by a blinding flash of chi, its cursed form unable to withstand the divine wrath flowing through Kim Yuta. Li Chanwu stood paralyzed, his eyes widening as the first wave of his army was erased in an instant. The green flames of the spirit arts licked at the air, marking the beginning of his nightmare. What is this power? Li Chanwu gasped, his confident facade cracking like brittle bone. Where did this sudden power come from? The villain's mind raced, searching for an explanation that did not exist within his precious system. Clearly, just a moment ago, he thought with growing panic he was on the verge of death. A heavy, oppressive wind swept through the skeletal skyscrapers, carrying the scent of ancient dust and impending doom. The battlefield was a stage, and the martial god had just raised the curtain. More abominations clawed their way out of the shadows, their hollow sockets glowing with malevolent purple light. Yet, against the burgeoning power of the disciples, they looked like nothing more than insignificant mobs. A colossus of bone towered over the small, fragile form of Nova. The fairy stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror as the monstrosity prepared to crush her into the pavement. Nova, Kim Yuta screamed, his heart seizing with dread. Has Nova not regained consciousness yet? He watched in desperation as his companion remained helpless. The giant skeleton lunged, its massive jaws snapping with a sound like grinding stone. Nova was a mere speck beneath its shadow, a lamb before a ravenous wolf. But then something shifted in the atmosphere. Nova's eyes suddenly flared with an intense, blinding white light, her body trembling with a power that felt old and absolute. A pillar of pure radiance erupted from the fairy, piercing through the giant's torso and shattering its frame into 1,000 fragments. The undead titan vanished in a burst of celestial judgment. The shockwave leveled the surrounding debris, leaving only a crater where the monster once stood. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of an awakened force. Nova blinked, staring at her glowing hands in utter bewilderment. Huh, she whispered, her voice barely audible amidst the carnage. Asura watched the transformation with a quiet, knowing gaze. The martial god grunted, nodding the spark of true potential within the tiny guide. Kim Yuta rushed to her side, his voice thick with relief. Nova, are you okay? He asked, checking for any injuries on the small girl. I think I really got stronger thanks to spirit arts or whatever, Kim Yuta noted, his eyes narrowing as he sensed the change. Oh, Tilda, I seem pretty strong too? Nova chimed in with newfound confidence, but Kim Yuta's expression remained grim as he looked at the horizon. But if we keep fighting like this, it won't end well. The skeletal army was endless, a purple tide that refused to be stemmed. They marched forward, their numbers far exceeding the stamina of any mortal warrior. Asura closed his eyes for a moment, his mind reaching out to the source of the villain's power. He stood silent, a storm brewing within the god. Li Chanwu frantically tapped at the glowing blue interface before him, his fingers trembling. He sought refuge in the numbers, the stats, and the rules he had worshipped for so long. Listen well, Asura commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. To stop him, we must first destroy that disgusting window. He pointed toward the translucent status window that Li Chanwu clutched like a lifeline. The martial god's face was etched with a rare look of frustration as he revealed the constraint upon his divine wrath. However, my dantian is currently sealed, so I can't use blast, Asura admitted with cold disdain. Thus, destroying it will not be easy, leaving the path to victory fraught with uncertainty. Kim Yuta gazed at the sovereign, his voice heavy with the realization of their precarious situation. But there is a way, right? He questioned. Even if your dantian is sealed, you are able to use spirit arts. The Fist King clenched his hand, his presence alone warping the air around him. Exactly, Asura declared with a terrifying smirk. Even if I can't use internal chi, using external chi is nothing for me. The martial god turned his calculating gaze toward the small guide, seeing a source of untapped potential. If there is enough chi, I can produce power equivalent to the blast, Asura explained. He then leaned in, his eyes narrowing, looking closely. Your chi is quite interesting. The command fell like a hammer of fate, shocking Nova to her very core. Kid, offer your soul to me, Asura roared. The girl could only gasp in utter bewilderment. Huh. A cataclysmic vortex of energy erupted within the heart of the ruins. The skis howled as the martial god began to draw upon the essence of the world, creating a storm of power that defied the system's logic. The cold, digital overseer of the tower reacted in alarm, its violet interface flashing a dire notification. Warning: the number of souls required for the quest is insufficient. The system demanded more blood, its text hanging in the air like a curse. Acquire SOULS to complete the quest. Li Chanwu gritted his teeth, his frustration boiling over as he stared at his window. Ha, because of those worms, only the souls needed for the quest are being wasted, he muttered with growing venom. Fury burned behind the villain's eyes, a storm of arrogance and desperation. However, I can just gather the souls again, Li Chanwu thought with cold disdain. Eliminating those hindrances comes first. He raised his hand, reaching out to the legion of the damned that obeyed his every whim. My SOULS, Li Chanwu commanded, his voice a deathly echo. All of you answer my call. A tide of skeletal monstrosities surged forward, a wall of bone and hatred meant to drown the intruders. Sweep away every enemy before your eyes, the villain barked, unleashing his insignificant mobs upon the god. Asura stood firm, his ancient wisdom guiding the young warrior beside him. Brat, keep this in mind, the martial god instructed. We'll only have one chance. Trust in me and pour out everything you have. The sovereign pointed a commanding finger toward the heart of the enemy horde. Open a path so I can reach HIM, Asura declared, his voice cutting through the din of battle like a divine blade. Kim Yuta unsheathed his weapon, the blade erupting with a brilliance that rivaled the sun. Don't worry, the brat shouted with fierce determination. It's not because I trust you, uncle, but for Nova and myself, I will definitely open a path. With a roar that shook the very heavens, the warrior threw himself into the fray. HUHHH, Kim Yuta screamed, a whirlwind of steel and divine intent carving through the undead ranks. The holy sword of Asdrion hummed with the resonance of a true relic as he unleashed a strike of absolute devastation. Celestial judgment, horizontal cut, the brilliance of the technique erased everything in its path. Li Chanwu watched the slaughter of his army with a smug, unbothered expression. FOOLS, pouring all your power just to clear the army, he mocked, blinded by his own hubris. A twisted laughter erupted from the villain's throat as he stared at the carnage. It's useless, he barked with cold disdain. It's far from enough to deal with all the souls I've collected. But the wind of death shifted. Asura appeared from the shadows, a specter of divine wrath looming over the villain. Just as I expected, coward, the martial god whispered, his voice a promise of destruction. The sovereign revealed the fatal flaw in the villain's strategy. Every time those damned spirits died, I watched you take out that blue window to check it, Asura stated, his eyes burning with cold intent. The Fist King's arm began to glow with a terrifying, concentrated chi. Your tiresome spirit ARTS, Asura began, his voice a low rumble of impending doom. The combined energy of the guide and the master focused into a single point, a strike that defied the laws of the tower itself. Asura and Nova stood as one against the digital nightmare. The blow was struck, a fist that carried the weight of a god's pride crashed into the air. End with this, Asura roared as he made contact with the villain's lifeline. The world itself seemed to crack under the pressure of the absolute technique. Fist King Asura style, destruction. The force of the impact resonated through the very fabric of reality. The invincible facade of Li Chanwu, the so-called successor of Tower number 312, begins to splinter under the weight of a power that knows no rules. Every level and every god-tier stat spiderwebs with cracks as the martial god's divine wrath strikes the very heart of the system's lies. Then comes the sound of a world dying. The status window disintegrates into a million digital shards, raining down like the ruins of a fallen empire. The illusion of absolute control is gone, shattered forever by the raw authority of the sovereign, leaving the villain to face the terrifying void of his own insignificance. Li Chanwu reels back in sheer terror, his eyes wide as the digital fragments of his existence rain down like glass. This can't be, he screams, his voice cracking under the weight of his crumbling reality. Something like this shouldn't be possible. Despair takes hold of the villain as he watches his grand ambitions evaporate into the void. To think everything of mine would be destroyed so futilely. Li Chanwu roars, his mind fracturing. I absolutely cannot accept this. A close-up of the madman's eye reveals the true depth of his loss. Every digit, every stat, every ounce of celerity he caved for is gone. My stat window, Li Chanwu gasps in a hollow whisper. My power. The heavens themselves seem to scream alongside the fallen pretender. My world, he bellows into the abyss. Below, the system confirms the cataclysm with a repeating, unfeeling decree. Error, error. The digital lattice of the tower glitches violently over the ruined cityscape. The cold intelligence of the system announces the permanent erasure of his twisted harvest. Data of souls registered in the system has been damaged. All souls will be permanently deleted. The final verdict is rendered in a blood-red box of light, sealing the villain's fate. Quest succession ritual has failed. The ritual is broken and the path to sovereignty is closed forever. Amidst the rubble and the digital fallout, Kim Yuta groans as the weight of physical existence returns to him. He mutters, the grit of the real world stinging his senses once more. The warrior sits up, clutching his chest as life surges back into his heart. "Ugh," he gasps, looking at his hands in disbelief. "Huh, did I return to my original body?" Kim Yuta slowly clenches his fist, feeling the steady rhythm of his pulse and the solid reality of his flesh. The phantom chill of the soul form has been replaced by the warmth of a recovered life. Surprise washes over the young protagonist as he realizes the miracle that has been performed. "My body really recovered, just like Uncle said," Kim Yuta thinks, his gaze drifting toward the source of this power. It's surprising all over again, but just what is that uncle's identity? Asura stands amidst the wreckage like a god descended from the heavens, his presence radiating an aura of absolute dominance. Kim Yuta watches him with awestruck eyes, wondering to himself, just how far do his limits go? Lee Chan-woo is a broken man, clutching his head as if he could hold his shattered psyche together. "No, nuo," he howls, a wretched sound of a creature that has lost its very soul. Kim Yuta watches with a mix of pity and cold satisfaction as the villain grovels in the dirt. "It's not true." Lee Chan-woo pleads with the uncaring sky. "Please, please, it can't end like this." The Fist King Asura remains unmoved, his arms crossed over his massive chest as he looks down at the pathetic display. Lee Chan-woo points a trembling finger of accusation, screaming, "This is all because of you bastards. Because of you." In a final, chilling close-up, the villain's face is consumed by the red light of pure madness. "The only way to save the world I lived in from destruction," Lee Chan-woo shrieks in his final moment of lucidity, "has been lost." Thus ends the reign of the pretender. The Spectre King recoils in a spasm of denial as his hollow reality begins to fracture. His voice cracks with the desperation of a man watching his life's work dissolve into nothingness. "It's not true. Please, please, I can't let it end like this." Standing as an unmovable pillar of divine wrath, Asura gazes upon the crumbling sanctuary with cold disdain. The Spectre King hurls his resentment at the martial deity. "This is all because of you bastards. Because of you." The Spectre King lets out a primal scream of absolute loss, his eyes burning with a crimson agony as the system's lies evaporate. "The only way to save my world from destruction has been lost." The archives shift, pulling back the veil of time to reveal the city before the apocalypse. In this forgotten era, the Spectre King was but an insignificant youth, oblivious to the impending doom. Amidst the cries of a world falling apart, he remained encased in his own silent world. He was a mere shadow in a crowd of the doomed. The Spectre King adjusted his headphones, attempting to drown out the discord of a reality that was about to be rewritten in blood. Then the sky itself tore open. Purple scars of the system's descent manifested above the metropolis, heralding the arrival of an inevitable nightmare. The Spectre King looked up, witnessing the end of days. In that horrific moment, the youth's eyes widened with a terror that would never leave him. The trivialities of his life were vaporized, replaced by the cold shadow of a god-tier catastrophe. The world burned. Flames licked the sky as high-rises became tombs of concrete and steel. The symphony of the city was replaced by the crackling of fire and the silence of the grave. Amidst the smoldering debris lay the victims of a merciless onslaught. A child and a man, forever silenced in the ash, served as a grim testament to the world's fragility. Even the innocent were not spared the divine wrath of the system. The streets were paved with the remains of the insignificant mobs who could not withstand the monster wave. Life was snuffed out as easily as a candle in a storm, leaving only the stench of death and the echoes of screams. The Spectre King knelt in the epicenter of the carnage, a broken soul amidst a ruined civilization. His world was dead, and he was the last witness to its agonizing end. Sweat and terror mingled in his eyes as the weight of his helplessness crushed his spirit. The world he knew had been erased, leaving behind a void that could only be filled with madness or a desperate quest for power. From the light of his despair emerged Eshua, the goddess of the tower. She stood as a majestic vision of divine salvation, offering a hand to a man who had lost everything. Her smile was a beautiful poison, a promise of a new reality for the price of a soul. The Spectre King stood before the system's interface, a digital covenant that would define his new existence. Returning to the present, Kim Yuta stands amidst the ruins, his voice cutting through the king's delusions. "What are you talking about all of a sudden? The world was destroyed." Kim Yuta stares at the fallen sovereign, his gaze demanding the truth of this artificial paradise. "Aren't you a player from another world like US? So why would your world suddenly?" The Spectre King clutches his head, the agonizing memories of his past surging back like a tidal wave. "When I PARTICPATED as a player, my world was doomed to be destroyed by a monster wave." Regret flows as bitter tears as he confesses his desperate motivation. The weight of his ancient grief is palpable in every word. "I wanted to save my world no matter what. I thought I could save it with my power." He speaks of his ascent, a journey fueled by a singular obsessive purpose. He strode toward the zenith of the tower, seeking the power to overwrite the tragedy of his past. "With the sole thought of saving everyone, I climbed to the top of the tower, and I learned one truth." At the summit, he reached for the ultimate reward, a divine mandate to reshape existence. That the one who conquers the tower is granted the power to create a new world. Kim Yuta looks on with a mixture of shock and dawning realization at the scale of this man's ambition. A new world, the power to create. The Spectre King confirms his god-tier transgression. He had used the system to build a cage of nostalgia. Yes, I used that power to try and recreate my world in this tower as it was before the destruction. His voice erupts in a desperate defense of his actions, a sovereign clinging to a shattered crown. I wanted to save and protect them with my own power, because I had gained the power to protect everyone. Rage and despair collide as the Spectre King clenches his fist, the weight of his crumbling world fueling a final, desperate condemnation. But the fallen king's voice rises to a frenzied peak, a pathetic roar against the inevitable as he points the finger of blame at the silent martial god. Everything is ruined because of you. If only you hadn't interfered, the quest would have. Asura looms over his fallen opponent, his voice a hammer of divine judgment. Asura commented with biting clarity, cut the cowardly excuses. You coward. The martial god's gaze bared the pathetic soul of the man who once thought himself a savior. Asura asked with absolute disdain, someone like you wants to save the world. Save everyone. Then why did you run away when the world was being destroyed? You never intended to save them in the first place. Every word from the Sovereign of Fists was a strike against the Spectre King's deluded reality. Asura demanded, did you say you wanted the power to recreate the world, not save it? Is that power just some pathetic number game? Asura dismissed the Spectre King's grand vision as a hollow, meaningless farce. Asura sneered, to think you'd recreate the world with such power. Even if you do such a foolish thing in this tower, what meaning would it have? The heavy tread of the martial god echoed through the crumbling chamber, his presence cracking the very foundations of the tower. Asura proclaimed with iron certainty, since you seem to have forgotten reality in your grief, I shall teach you one thing. With arms crossed in a pose of absolute authority, Asura bared the cowardice hidden beneath the mask of a hero. Asura declared, you just wanted to escape your weak reality and play hero. Pushed beyond the limits of his fragile ego, the Spectre King roared in a futile attempt to deny the truth. The Spectre King screamed, shut up. Driven by blind, pathetic rage, the Spectre King lunged forward, his movements a desperate scramble for relevance in the face of absolute power. The martial god met the assault with a fist of divine wrath, shattering the Spectre King's face and his illusions in a single, crushing impact. SFX, KKWAJIK. A pillar of raw energy erupted from the strike, a testament to the martial god's rejection of the system's pathetic rules. SFX, QUAANG. The Spectre King lay broken in the dust of his shattered world, blood staining his desperate gasps. The Spectre King thought in agony, no, that's not it. He coughed, then cried out, I really did it to save everyone. The archive shifts back to a cursed memory, to the moment a deal was struck with a goddess. Eshua whispered with a deceptive, divine grace play in him. You have finally cleared all stages of the tower. The architect of the tower dangled a poisoned chalice of hope before the grieving man. Eshua proposed with a cold, celestial beauty. Now, if you wish, you can return to your world just before its destruction, face the monster wave. The man who would become the Spectre King listened, the weight of a dying world heavy upon his soul as the goddess presented her hollow choices. Eshua continued her offer, and save your world. But the alternative was a trap laid in the velvet of a divine quest. Eshua suggested, or you can accept a special quest, inherit the tower's power, and recreate the world you lived in within this tower. The divine manipulator turned her back, leaving the mortal to drown in the uncertainty of his own heart. Eshua commanded, make your choice. What will you do? Her voice echoed in the void, forcing a decision between a hero's death and a god's illusion. Eshua asked with a piercing gaze, will you return to your original world to face the monster wave and become a hero in an endless war? Or will you create the world you desire in this tower? In the darkness of his own weakness, the man's resolve withered. Eshua whispered the final temptation and become the savior of the world. The man who was Li Chanwu thought with a broken spirit, He chose the path of the coward, reaching for the artificial salvation of the tower. The Spectre King declared his choice, I will inherit all the power of this tower, and save my own world. SFX, GOYO. Back in the present, the sky itself began to tear as the system buckled under Asura's smite. The system blared with a red, urgent finality, warning, warning, the tower system is COLLAPSING, all data in the tower will be DELETED. SFX, KOOGUGUGU. Kim Yuta and Nova watched in absolute horror as their world disintegrated into shards of data. Kim Yuta shouted in disbelief, WH, what is this now? Tell me, is the tower COLLAPSING? SFX, KOOGUGUGU. The panic of the small guide mirrored the impending doom of their entire reality. Nova cried out in terror, Mister, what do we do? At this rate, we'll GO down with the tower. The Spectre King looked up, a cryptic secret of the goddess on his dying lips. The Spectre King whispered, ESHUA once told me this. Kim Yuta thought in confusion. As light begins to bleed from the king's flickering form, he unveils a forbidden truth that anchors all existence within the system. The Spectre King explained with a haunting rasp that all the towers in this world are ultimately connected by one path. Kim Yuta watched the sovereign's confession with an unwavering gaze, the mystery of the goddess's words weaving a new thread of fate into his soul, just as the tower shrieked its final warning. Yuta's eyes widened at the revelations shared by the Spectre King. I do not know what that single path she spoke of truly means. The Spectre King continues his final revelation, his form flickering with the unstable energy of a dying world. The Spectre King whispered with a haunting certainty, but perhaps, if you reach the end of that path, you will be able to meet Goddess Eshua as well. A divine mystery is dangled before the protagonist as the Spectre King prepares to vanish into the void. The Spectre King declared, if you wish to find Eshua, seek out that path. Kim Yuta stares back at the fatting sovereign, his mind racing to grasp the weight of these cryptic instructions. Kim Yuta asked with a mix of suspicion and urgency, what do you mean by that? And why are you telling us this? The Spectre King is forced to confront the shattered remnants of his own pride as his life's work crumbles into data dust. The Spectre King muttered with a heavy heart, because MEMORAES I tried hard to ignore have surfaced. Now I understand. The martial god stands as a silent judge of the cowardice that built this artificial sanctuary. The Spectre King confessed his sin with a hollow voice, just as THAT muscle-bound man said, I was just a coward fleeing from a weak reality intoxicated by playing hero. Amidst the falling debris of his kingdom, the Spectre King accepts the absolute finality of his defeat. The Spectre King lamented with cold despair, even if I admit it now nothing will change. After all, I gave up the choice to return to my original world. With his world reduced to a glitching memory, the man who would be king faces the ultimate void. The Spectre King stated with a somber finality, so in this world of nothing but emptiness, I have no reason left to live. The Spectre King pointed toward the path of survival, indifferent to his own looming fate. He spoke with a raspy, fatting breath. The exit should be right behind you. If you hesitate any longer, even that escape will vanish before the tower collapses. Get the hell out of here while you still can. The martial god acknowledges the final decision of his fallen foe with a respect reserved only for the dead. Asura declared with a solemn tone, you intend to remain here. Understood. Though you were a coward, you are not pathetic. Do as you wish. Asura walks away, leaving behind a promise of vengeance that spans across the tower. Kim Yuta is stunned by the cold practicality of the martial god. Asura promised, if I meet that woman and crush her later, I will consider your share as well. Kim Yuta shouted in disbelief, mister? Are you really just going to leave HIM here? The young protagonist cannot fathom abandoning a soul amidst the collapse. Kim Yuta pleaded with a frantic hope. He can just come with us and look for Eshua too. Asura silences the boy's ignorance with the harsh wisdom of a true sovereign of battle. Asura declared with commanding power, silence, you ignorant brat. He was defeated in a life-or-death battle. The martial god defines the ancient concept of mercy, far removed from the petty sentiments of the weak. Asura explained with cold logic, for the victor to not take his life, but allow the loser to choose his own place of death. What greater mercy could there be? Kim Yuta could only utter, huh. Time is a luxury the tower will no longer grant. Nova cries out to her master as the foundations of reality begin to crumble. Kim Yuta stammered, BBUT. Nova shouted with desperate urgency, there's no time. YUDA. The scale of the destruction is absolute, a systemic deletion that will leave nothing behind. Nova warned with frantic intensity, soon the entire tower will completely collapse. Kim Yuta clenches his teeth, a storm of defiance brewing within him as he refuses to accept the martial god's grim mercy. Kim Yuta thought with iron resolve, I know, Nova, but I can't. In a display of reckless compassion, Kim Yuta hoists the broken king onto his back. Kim Yuta declared with absolute conviction, I can't just give up on a person's life. Nova watches in wide-eyed shock as her master chooses a path of extreme danger. Nova could only gasp his name, YUDA. The Spectre King is baffled by this act of selfless defiance as he is carried through the falling ruins. The Spectre King asked with a weary confusion, what are you doing right now? I have no power, no purpose left now. The man who lost his world sees no reason to return to a reality that only holds pain. The Spectre King whispered into the chaos, even if I leave the tower like this, I have no reason to live. Kim Yuta roars his answer over the thunder of the collapsing skyscraper, a defiant affirmation of existence itself. Kim Yuta shouted with unrelenting will, even if you say you have no reason to live, if you keep living, a reason will appear. The protagonist refuses to let the Spectre King surrender to the void. Kim Yuta commanded, so don't just throw your life away. The Spectre King fell into a stunned silence. Amidst the systemic disintegration, a bond of names is forged. The Spectre King asked with a newfound curiosity, YOU, what is your name? Nova snapped with frantic frustration, seriously. In this situation, you have to ask that. Kim Yuta spits out his name as he lunges toward the exit, his body straining under the weight of a dying king while the world vanishes behind them. Kim Yuta barked with a rough impatience, it's KIMYUDA, you jerk, happy now. The Spectre King mulls over the name of his savior, a faint human smile finally touching his lips as the false crown of godhood slips away. The Spectre King muttered with a soft chuckle, KIMYUDA, that's a peculiar name. SFX, Pisik tilde. Amidst the thunder of a collapsing skyscraper, Kim Yuta carries his former enemy through the ruins. Kim Yuta barked with a rough impatience, what? Are you done talking? Then what's your name? The man on his back answered with a voice that was barely a whisper, I am called Lee Chanwu. Kim Yuta scoffed with a grim smirk. PFFTHAHA. Not exactly a grand name either. Lee Chanwoo gazes at the protagonist with a gaze that has finally discarded the weight of his false godhood. Lee Chanwoo muttered with a solemn clarity, KIMYUDA. I have one final request for you. A blinding light erupts as a divine inheritance is passed from the fallen to the rising sovereign. Lee Chanwoo pleaded with his remaining strength, please, use this power for the right cause. Kim Yuta could only gasp in shock at the sudden surge of energy. Kim Yuta roars against the unwanted gift, his soul rejecting the system's pathetic attempts to define him. Kim Yuta shouted with a fierce confusion, what is this all of a sudden? Get off of me, who asked for something like this? Lee Chanwoo's body begins to disintegrate into shards of data, the towers collapse reclaiming its hollow creations. Lee Chanwoo explained with a tragic finality, even if I leave the tower like this, I will cease to exist before long. Without the power of the system, it is impossible to maintain this body. The man who once played God is reduced to a flickering ghost in the void of a systemic deletion. Lee Chanwoo spoke his name for the last time, YUDA. With his final breath, the Spectre King delivers a command that transcends the tower's artificial borders. Lee Chanwoo declared with an absolute certainty, you must return to your original world. Kim Yuta stares into the blinding light of the vanishing man, a scream of absolute loss tearing from his throat. Kim Yuta roared, Lee Chanwoo. The system's countdown reaches its ultimate conclusion, a red herald of total annihilation. The system announced with a merciless coldness, warning the tower is completely COLLAPSING. Time remaining 000001. All data in the tower will be DELETED. Tower number 312 disintegrates into a cloud of ash and data, a majestic spire falling into the abyss of non-existence as the heavens themselves bleed purple. The finality of the destruction is recorded by the unfeeling system, a chapter closed in the divine game of the architect. The system blared with a triumphal ring, No 312 the tower has been completely destroyed. SFX, DDI ring tilde. In a realm of shadowed luxury, the sovereign of deceit watches the deletion of her toy from a grand throne. Eshua sits in silent contemplation, her eyes fixed on the display of mortal struggle. The goddess stares with a cold, piercing intensity, her gaze measuring the worth of the one who survived her trap. Eshua remained in a haunting silence. A divine smirk of pure malice touches the lips of the goddess as she sets her sights on the next target. Eshua chuckled with a chilling delight. Now, that's just one tower. You better try HARDER, UNSDAT player. A system message announces the inevitable. All data of the tower has been deleted. The monolithic structure crumbles, dissolving into particles of light, its very existence wiped from the world. Kim Yuta and Asura watch as the last remnants of the tower vanish. Yuta mutters in disbelief, really, everything has disappeared. Yuta looks at a glowing golden artifact in his hand, a remnant of the system's power. He thinks to himself, from the moment the stat window shattered, was it already too late to save him? He recalls the fundamental rule of this world. If the stat window shatters, the player's physical body also perishes. A vision of Lee Chanwoo disintegrating flashes in his mind as he realizes, that means I should have already perished too. As the memory of his own stat window shattering comes to mind, a crucial question arises. So why am I fine unlike Lee Chanwoo? He gazes at the golden object in his palm, a possible explanation forming in his mind. Do I still have the power of the system remaining within me? Suddenly, a voice cuts through his thoughts as Asura steps closer. Why have you been making such a serious face for a while now, kid? Asura looks down at him, his expression unreadable. Is it because that spirit master died? Asura scoffs, ha, you are more sentimental than you look. Yuta, annoyed, snaps back, yeah, so what? Are you going to nag me again? Yuta confesses his complicated feelings. Lee Chanwoo, that guy, I just feel uneasy about it. He was definitely a bad guy, but it feels strangely bittersweet. And at the end, he gave me this, telling me to use it for the right cause and to make sure I return to my original world. Having made up his mind, Yuta looks at Asura and says, I don't know what kind of power this is, but I'll give it to you first, mister. He holds out the glowing artifact, feeling a sense of certainty in his decision. Right now, somehow, that feels like the right choice. Asura takes the object, his eyes narrowing as he inspects it. I can feel that damn woman's chi from this. Perhaps with this power I could unseal the Danshin. Yuta's eyes widen. Really? Then will you regain all your strength? But Asura is quick to temper his expectations. Do not get ahead of yourself. With this amount, only a tiny fraction will be recovered. Asura elaborates. Although what I feel from this object is identical to hers, it falls short of the powerful chi that sealed my Danshin. A new term catches Yuta's attention. Curious, he asks. I've been curious for a while, but what is this Danshin? Before getting an answer, Yuta adds, "You're strong regardless of that dancing thing." Asura begins to explain the source of his immense power. "The power I am using now is external arts. It is literally pure physical strength." The revelation leaves both Yuta and Nova completely stunned. All this time, Asura had been fighting with nothing but his bare hands. Yuta thinks in awe, he's a monster. Asura's gaze hardens, hinting at a power far beyond what they've seen. "And if I recover the Danshin," he declares, "I can use internal energy." Asura continues, explaining the next level of power. "Internal energy uses the power of chi flowing through my body to exert powerful strength that transcends external arts." The concept is foreign to Yuta, who can only relate it to his own experiences. His eyes widen in shock as he asks, "Internal energy? Is it like a magic skill?" Yuta falls into a contemplative silence, putting the pieces together. Come to think of it, that mister was strong even without a stat window. His mind tries to process the sheer scale of Asura's power. Strong enough to destroy the stat window and the tower. If he had stats, just how high would they have been? Nova, noticing his distraction, asks, "Yuda, what are you thinking?" He replies absent-mindedly, I was wondering what Mister's strength would be in stats." Asura's voice cuts in, followed by a light flick to Yuda's forehead. "Are you still judging strength by those blue windows and numbers?" Caught off guard, Yuta mutters under his breath, "He has sharp ears too." Beside him, Nova can only think, "He's definitely a monster." Looking up at the martial master with a newfound curiosity, Yuta asks a serious question. "Then, what is this strength you talk about, mister?" Asura's response is sharp and immediate, dismissing Yuta's entire framework of understanding. "Foolish." He begins his lesson, his hand open as if grasping a profound concept. "Strength is..." His hand clenches into a powerful fist, the air crackling around it. Originally the result of blood and sweat. His eyes burn with intensity as he defines the true source of power, training and effort to obtain it. Asura explains his philosophy through a simple example. "Listen well. To throw a strong punch, I swung my fist 1,000 times a day. However, if someone swung it 1,001 times a day..." He stomps the ground, shattering it beneath his foot. "Am I weaker than him?" His answer is a resounding no. He pulls his arm back, demonstrating his point. "More than the number of 1,000, it is about how much I yearned for power with every punch I threw." He simplifies the lesson to its very core. In other words, putting your whole heart into achieving what you desire. With his eyes glowing, Asura unleashes a punch. That which is gained through that process is true strength. Asura throws a single, straight punch, not at a target, but into the empty air before him. The air itself seems to tear apart. The sheer force of the punch carves a massive, perfectly straight path of destruction through the dense forest, felling trees for as far as the eye can see. In the face of such unbelievable power, Yuta and Nova can only stare, their minds completely blank with shock, unable to process what they just witnessed. Asura turns his head, his lesson concluded, and asks simply, "Do you understand?" But he quickly dismisses the lesson as a minor detail. Anyway, the real problem is... He gazes at the golden, spinning artifact in his hands, a look of contemplation on his face. How to use this power? Frustration flashes across his face, his eyes glowing red with annoyance. "Damn it, it's full of unknown things. Maya Wall, what on earth were you thinking?" The scene shifts to a wide, beautiful landscape, showing the world outside the tower for the first time. Yuta and Asura stand in a clearing, surrounded by nature. Asura asks, "Is this the first time you are seeing it too?" Yuta confirms, "Right. Because thanks to someone, my stats were smashed before I could clear the tower." Yuta looks down, a hint of despair in his voice. "And I thought everything would end if I climbed the tower." Asura listens quietly before simply replying, "I see." Suddenly, Asura's attention shifts, his eyes narrowing as he senses something. Then, would that guy know? Yuta is startled by the sudden change in atmosphere, turning around with a look of surprise. "Huh." Asura watches the approaching presence, wondering aloud, does that guy also covet this power? His voice drops, becoming a command that echoes through the clearing. "Reveal yourself." A figure emerges from the tree line, walking towards them with heavy, deliberate steps. Yuta is on high alert, analyzing the newcomer. What is that again? Is it a monster that survived the tower? I don't see any red aura. A formidable warrior wearing a skull mask and carrying a large axe now stands before them. Asura remains calm, his voice steady as he issues a simple, direct question to the mysterious figure. Who are you? The masked warrior doesn't answer. Instead, it wordlessly takes a fighting stance. Asura's face breaks into a wild, excited grin. Ha ha ha, fine, no need for talk, come. The masked warrior instantly charges forward, its feet tearing up the ground as it moves with incredible speed. It swings its massive axe, the blade glowing with a faint purple aura as it cuts through the air, aimed directly at Asura. Asura doesn't flinch, a smirk playing on his lips as he prepares to meet the powerful attack head-on. The masked warrior leaps high into the air, twisting its body to bring the axe down with incredible force. But Asura stands his ground, raising a single hand to meet the blow. Its eyes glowing with purple energy from behind the skull mask, the warrior announces its technique, axe style. From an overhead view, the sheer speed of the descending axe is clear as it hurtles towards Asura. The attack slams into the ground, unleashing a devastating explosion of purple energy that shatters the earth. The name of the skill echoes with the impact, Earth Splitter. Blood splatters across the ravaged ground, a testament to the power of the strike. But the blood is not from a fatal wound. In a shocking display of power, Asura has stopped the massive, glowing axe blade with nothing but his bare fingers. A confident smirk spreads across Asura's face. Though his fingers are bleeding, he seems impressed. You have quite the stance. The masked warrior is frozen, unable to process what just happened. With his grip tightening, the metal of the axe head begins to crack and splinter under the pressure of his fingers. However, the masked warrior looks on in utter shock as its ultimate attack is effortlessly neutralized. Asura casually flings the warrior away, completely unimpressed. It is futile to target this king with just that. Before the warrior can recover, Asura strikes its face with the heel of his palm, shattering the skull mask with a deafening crack. The impact sends a shockwave through the air, blasting away dust and debris. Standing amidst the aftermath, Asura looks on with a challenging smirk, completely unfazed. Try harder. From within the settling dust, a voice filled with pure fury screams out, I can't forgive. The figure rises, eyes glowing with rage in the darkness. I will never forgive. Yuta stares in disbelief, his eyes wide with shock as he recognizes the unmasked attacker. That person. The smoke clears, revealing Eshua, the architect of the tower. Her face is twisted in a furious snarl as she screams the question that hangs heavy in the air. Why did you all destroy my tower? A mysterious hooded figure with blonde hair glares intensely, her voice filled with accusation. Why did you destroy my tower? Kim Yuta is taken aback, his eyes wide with shock. We did destroy a tower, but... Nova looks on with just as much confusion, adding, we're not really sure if it was yours. The woman grits her teeth, her anger building into a furious tremor. She explodes with rage, her voice cracking as she screams, Don't play dumb, I saw you destroying the tower with my own eyes. Her yelling continues, desperate and frustrated. What are you even after? Why would you do something like that? Asura watches the scene unfold, his expression cold and unimpressed. As Kim Yuta listens, Kalina's voice rings out, filled with 2 years of frustration. If it weren't for you, because of you, I've been wandering this wasteland for 2 whole years, in this ruined world. I could have gone back to my original world long ago. Just as she finishes her sentence, a hand smacks down on her head. With Kalina now face down in the dirt, Asura stands over her dismissively. You sure talk a lot for someone who lost. Kim Yuta can only sweat drop at the sudden turn of events, utterly bewildered. What? As the sun rises, casting a warm glow over the landscape, the tense atmosphere finally begins to settle. Having calmed down completely, Kalina now kneels on the ground, speaking with genuine regret. Sorry, I misunderstood and almost hurt you. With her head bowed low and her weapons cast aside, she offers a sincere apology. I'm really sorry. Kim Yuta scratches the back of his head with a reassuring smile. It's okay, haha. It was more than reasonable to misunderstand. Please stand up. Once on her feet, Kalina looks at Kim Yuta with a sense of wonder. Anyway, it's honestly amazing that you made it all the way to the top of the tower with those stats. Kim Yuta's expression turns serious as a thought crosses his mind. Could I take another look at your stat window, Kalina? Just a moment. Here, Kalina says, promptly pulling up a translucent blue screen in front of her. The stat window reveals the impossible. Kalina is level 86, but her core stats, strength, agility, intelligence, and luck are all just 1. And below that, an astounding 86 million unused stat points. The sight leaves Kim Yuta utterly stunned. His eyes are wide with shock as he says out loud, "I still can't believe it. You reached the top of the tower." His mind still reeling, Kim Yuta thinks to himself, with stats like this. He glances over at Asura, who is meditating with a calm but powerful pink aura. That's basically leveling up and never using your stat points. The thought continues, echoing in the silence. For this to even be possible, this person. As they walk through the forest, a startling comparison enters Kim Yuta's mind. Is she as strong as that old man? He then turns to Kalina and asks, You said there was nothing at the top of the tower, right? Kalina looks ahead, her expression somber as she confirms his question. Yeah, there was nothing, instead. She recalls the moment she reached the peak, standing before the dissipating tower. Not even the usual monsters in sight. The tower started to disappear with an error message. Stats are insufficient. Kim Yuta processes this new information, his hand to his chin as the pieces click into place. An error happened because the stats weren't high enough. Then that was definitely Eshua's doing. Kalina looks at him, startled and confused by the unfamiliar name. Eshua. Kim Yuta's gaze hardens as he explains their mission. The being that gave us these stat windows and powers and called us to the tower. We're chasing that being to find a way back to our original world. As Kalina gazes at the setting sun, a new understanding dawns on her. Then that means she's also. Her attention shifts to Asura, who is sitting cross-legged, enveloped in a swirling vortex of fiery energy as he meditates. But what is he doing right now? Kim Yuta deadpans, equally unsure of the spectacle. Good question. The energy around Asura intensifies, flaring up with immense power as he continues his meditation. The golden rings he holds begin to glow and spin, forming a radiant, pulsating orb of light between his hands. Suddenly, the energy erupts from Asura in a massive, ground-shattering pillar of red light that shoots toward the sky. Kim Yuta shields himself from the intense shockwave, debris flying around him. What is this now? In a flash of spiritual energy, an image of Asura's astral form appears, bound by heavy chains. A brilliant light explodes from his chest as if he's breaking one of his seals. Yuta and Kalina watch in utter disbelief. Yuta thinks, his mind blown by the sheer scale of the power on display, he's just restoring one danshin. Why is the effect so flashy? Just as the thought crosses his mind, a jolt of energy seems to strike Kim Yuta, his eyes flying open in shock. He clutches his head, gritting his teeth in pain as his eyes glow a haunting gold. NNGH, my head. A horrifying vision flashes through his mind. A magnificent castle being torn apart by explosions, crumbling into ruin and flames. The vision of destruction continues as meteors rain down from the sky, obliterating the city below in a series of fiery explosions. Amidst the chaos, a single glowing humanoid figure floats ominously, seemingly the source of the devastation. The vision focuses on a woman with silver hair, her face a mask of pure terror and despair as she lets out a heart-wrenching scream. No. Snapping back to reality, Kim Yuta sweats, his eyes wide with lingering horror from the vision. What are these? Memories? He thinks. Those faces look familiar. The immense energy finally subsides, and Asura rises to his feet, standing tall as the dust settles around him. He examines a faint flicker of energy in his palm. My internal power has started to flow a little, but it's still far from enough. His expression hardens with resolve as he clenches his fist. I'll need more of this power to break the seal on my danshin. Asura's thoughts turn to a memory of a silhouetted woman with glowing red eyes. So I have to use that power. He stares intently at the lingering image of his mysterious adversary, finishing his thought with grim determination. To undo her seal, A sharp, predatory grin spreads across Asura's face as a new plan forms in his mind. Interesting. Turning back to the group, Asura makes a bold declaration. I've figured out how to get my strength back. If I use this energy, I'll be able to fully restore my danshin. With a wide, eager grin, he points forward, ready for action. So hurry up, let's head to the next tower, brat. Kim Yuta looks hesitant, raising a practical objection. But mister, not every tower has an heir's power, right? He continues to voice his concern, his expression thoughtful. There might be towers without an heir yet. A soft voice interjects, "No, I know the way." Kim Yuta turns in surprise, realizing who spoke. Nova. His eyes go wide with shock as he stares at her altered appearance. "Why do you look like that?" Nova floats in midair, her entire body enveloped in a gentle pink aura, her eyes glowing with the same vibrant energy. She looks up, a sense of wonder on her face. "I don't really know what happened either, but I can feel it now." Her hair floats as streams of purple energy connect to her. She begins to explain her newfound perception, all the big and small powers that make up this world. The streams of energy converge, and a brilliant light flashes around her as she fully grasps her new sense. "I think I can tell where they're flowing," she announces with newfound certainty. Now floating confidently, Nova points the way forward. "So let me guide you," she declares. Her expression is fierce and determined as she finishes her sentence, "to where the heir's power is." Kim Yuta looks on with a newfound sense of purpose as Nova announces their goal. "To our next destination." The scene shifts. Late at night, under a bright full moon, stands a massive Gothic castle. Mist swirls around the dark, towering spires of the ominous castle, its windows glowing with a faint, eerie pink light. This is the heart of the demon realm. Inside, the grand hall is vast and silent, decorated with regal banners hanging from the high walls. The quiet is broken by the sound of polished dress shoes clicking against the stone floor. A stern-faced elf with neatly combed silver hair and a monocle appears. He's dressed immaculately in a formal suit, exuding an air of cold professionalism. This elf, Graydon, begins his report to a figure off-screen. The farmland Bloodwind Field, personally designed by the Demon King, sends a share of the harvest every month as maintenance cost. He continues, his tone even and formal. And the Dark Mine is on schedule to deliver 1 gold bar every month. The camera pans up to a horned figure slouched on a massive throne, listening to the report with a thoughtful HM tilde. A greedy, toothy grin spreads across the Demon King's face as he chuckles with satisfaction. Good, haha. At this rate, hitting 1 million coins isn't far off, haha. Still smiling, the Demon King dismisses his subordinate. Graydon, you've worked hard all this time too, so take a break, tilde. Graydon, however, remains still. There is just one unusual report. The Demon King leans forward slightly, his interest piqued. Unusual? The throne room seems to stretch on endlessly before him. Graydon explains, yes, while a soldier was patrolling the east wall, he spotted an unidentified group. His gaze sharpens as he delivers his analysis. It's not confirmed yet, but based on my analysis of who they might be. Standing before the crimson-lit stained glass windows, Graydon makes his conclusion. It seems that a new hero party has appeared in the demon realm. The Demon King scoffs at the news. A new hero party? They still haven't learned their lesson. He looks up, a vicious, predatory grin revealing his sharp fangs. His red eyes glint with malice. Fine then, bring on whoever they are, because whoever they may be. As he speaks, a vision appears before him, showing the very heroes he's talking about. Asura, Kaelina, Kim Yuta, and Nova are walking together, completely unaware that they are being watched by their next powerful enemy. The Demon King finishes his sentence with a furious vow. They won't take a single step into My Castle. A new day dawns, with a clear blue sky full of fluffy white clouds. A system message appears over a medieval-looking town. Player Kaelina's stats have been confirmed. The system continues its process. System code approved normally, transporting to Tower number 8. A group of people materializes in a flash of purple light. One of them, a man with black hair, looks around in surprise. What the? We got inside the tower, just like this. He remarks to his companion, it certainly is more convenient, if you have stats in this world, hee. The muscular man with long hair scoffs at him. Pathetic wretch, you're still harping on about some blue windows. The muscular man thinks to himself with a grim expression. Even the time spent doing this is a waste. I must recover my dantian quickly. He turns to the small girl, Kaelina, and asks, So, kid, where is that successor guy or whatever? A hand points towards a large building in the distance. The successor's power is... The view shifts to a grand castle as the voice finishes, right inside. Inside the castle's throne room, a voice bellows out in anger. You failed to subjugate the Demon King again, Hero Evan. An old commander with a gray beard shouts furiously. Just how long must we wait until you catch the Demon King? A young man named Evan James, with light brown spiky hair, smirks as he replies, "Ah, Tilda, we were really almost there, but the equipment suddenly broke at the last minute, you know, hee." Evan continues his excuses with a grin. "If you could just support us with slightly better equipment, I think it would really be possible this time, hee." From the throne, a figure looks down at Evan. "Equipment? Just a few months ago, we granted you top-tier equipment, did we not?" Evan chuckles nervously. "Ah, Tilda, hee, that is true, but the weapons weren't really my style, hee." Evan gets a sly look on his face. "Ah, and while we're at it, how about selecting some new saintesses? Lately, my divine power seems to have weakened a lot, hee." The old commander seethes with rage, gritting his teeth. "Your shamelessness truly knows no bounds." He slams his fist on the armrest of his throne and shouts, "Evan James, you are no longer the hero of our kingdom." As guards point their spears at a stunned Evan, the commander delivers his final verdict. "You shall be banished from our kingdom." Evan tries to deflect with a nervous laugh, promising things will be different this time. "Ha ha! Why are you suddenly being like this again? I'm telling you this time will be different, the secret weapon I have prepared." But the commander roars, completely ignoring the pathetic excuse. He reveals that he knows everything. "Do you think I don't know that under the pretext of subjugating the Demon King, you have been squandering the national treasury and living dissolutely?" The commander's patience runs out. He glares at Evan with cold fury, giving him a final warning. "If you do not take your leave at this moment, I will execute you right here and now." But Evan is completely unfazed, waving a hand dismissively. "You're really being extra today, Tilda. Do you know how much effort I've put into this country?" Before he can finish his sentence, the throne room wall explodes inwards, sending Evan and the surrounding guards flying. The royal guards stumble back in shock and confusion. "What is this? What is happening suddenly?" From the dust of the explosion, Asura appears, looking around tensely. "Don't tell me. Is it a raid by the Demon King's army?" The small spirit girl with them ignores the chaos, pointing directly at the fallen Evan. "Mister, it's that person. I can feel the successor's power from that person." That's all Asura needs to hear. He lunges toward Evan, his eyes blazing. "If you don't want to die, hand over your power immediately." The guards, seeing Asura as an intruder, raise their weapons. "How dare you cause a commotion? Do you not know where you are? Subdue that bastard immediately." One of the guards declares the penalty for their intrusion. "The punishment for defiling the royal family is immediate execution." Asura's fist clenches, his patience worn thin. In an instant, Asura unleashes a single punch, and the force sends the charging guards flying through the air. Watching from the throne, the commander can only utter a single sound of disbelief. "Oh." He stares in stunned silence, his mind racing. What was that just now?" Two royal guards were sent flying, with just a single punch. A slow, wicked grin spreads across Evan's face as an idea forms in his mind. He thinks to himself, that guy is." Suddenly filled with confidence, Evan scrambles to his feet and points at Asura's group. "Look, Your Majesty, these people are the secret weapon I spoke of." As Kim Yuta and Kalina look on, bewildered, Evan continues his desperate sales pitch. "It's not only this man who has superhuman strength, every single person here is much stronger than your average S-rank mercenary." He gestures grandly to the newcomers, making a bold declaration. "Together with these people, we will surely subjugate the Demon King, Belzar." Hearing this, Asura's head whips around, his expression turning to one of sheer annoyance as he realizes he's being used. "What?" The scene shifts, showing people walking peacefully on a street in the town. The scene cuts back to the town street. With a sudden, loud crash, Evan plummets from the sky, smashing into a pile of wooden barrels right before the party's eyes. Instantly, Asura is on him, steam rising from his body in fury. He looms over the dazed man and demands, "What kind of bullshit are you spouting?" Still sitting amidst the wreckage of the barrels, Evan laughs it off. Sorry. Are you guys new players or successors?" Kim Yuta looks surprised by the question and hesitates. Well, we are." Evan quickly jumps up and throws a friendly arm around Yuta, cutting him off. "No, forget it. Stuff like that isn't really important." He gets straight to the point, recalling Asura's earlier threat. "From what you said, it seems you're after the successor's power." A wide, scheming grin spreads across Evan's face as he points a thumb at himself. "In that case, you've come to the right place. Let's take care of the Demon King together." Asura's thoughts are dismissive and hostile. Shut up already and quit the nonsense. A menacing, fiery silhouette of his power looms over Evan. I just need to extract that power from your body. Evan doesn't even flinch. He glances back with a cool, knowing look. Oh, Tilda, really? He smirks, issuing a challenge. Then try taking it. You seem confident that you won't destroy the successor's power. I extracting it by force. Asura's confident expression falters at this unexpected complication. His eyes widen in shock and anger. He growls, "What did you say?" Evan casually explains the crucial system rule Asura was unaware of. What? Didn't you know that? If you forcibly take another successor's power, it gets destroyed. The little spirit girl pops up on Kim Yuta's shoulder as Evan lays out his deal. So, if you clear the Demon King subjugation quest with me, I'll hand over my power willingly. Yuta listens in silence. Asura is unimpressed by the offer, turning away. Enough, that's a worthless proposal. But Kim Yuta steps in to reason with him. Mister, wait a moment, it might actually be true. Lee Chanwoo's power wasn't forcibly taken either, he gave it to us himself. Evan lets out a thoughtful hum, realizing he's found the reasonable one in the group. He turns to Kim Yuta, extending a hand. You're someone I can talk to, huh? I haven't introduced myself yet. Nice to meet you, I'm Evan. Yuta hesitantly accepts the handshake. Ah, yes, I am Kim Yuta. Yuta tries to ask for more information. I have a question, though, about not being able to take the successor's power by force. How do you? But Evan loudly cuts him off, eager to close the deal. Now then, Tilda. Evan pushes for an answer, turning to the other two with his hand outstretched. What about the rest of you? Deal. Kalina looks to Asura, admitting their difficult position. I don't trust him, but it seems we don't have much of a choice. What do you think? Asura remains silent, his expression grim as the decision falls to him. After a tense silence, Asura reluctantly agrees, but with a sharp threat. If I sense even the slightest trickery, I will twist your neck immediately. Evan just laughs nervously. Of course, he. With the deal struck, Evan claps his hands together, all business now. Anyhow, since we've come to an agreement, shall we get our equipment sorted first? The scene changes to a desolate, volcanic wasteland under a fiery red sky, with rivers of lava flowing between sharp, rocky peaks. A figure in new armor steps onto the scorched earth. It's Evan, looking around in awe. So this is the demon realm where the Demon King resides. The rest of the party, now also outfitted in armor, takes in the vast, hellish landscape. Asura remarks, it's more spacious than I thought. Evan, clad in shining full-plate armor, strikes a heroic pose and shouts, Now, let's go subjugate the Demon King. But the moment is ruined as Asura smashes the heavy pauldron off his own shoulder. Evan yells in disbelief, Huh, what do you think you're doing? Asura tosses the broken armor piece aside, completely unconcerned. Things like this only get in the way. I don't need them. Evan looks utterly dejected. Okay, he mumbles, adding quietly to himself, it was expensive, though. He then turns his attention to Kalina, who hasn't changed her outfit. You don't need it either. Kalina simply looks ahead, content with her own gear. I like it. Asura grows impatient with the delay. Don't stall for time. Where's the Demon King? Evan points toward an ominous Gothic castle looming in the distance, its silhouette dark against the red sky. Usually, in these hero-genre worlds, we have to at least reach the Demon King's castle. Suddenly, a strange sound echoes from the castle as multiple objects are launched into the air. They look like modern-day missiles. The missiles streak across the sky, leaving trails of smoke as they arc towards the party's location, causing them to stop in their tracks. A red triangular targeting reticle suddenly appears on the ground around them. Yuta stares up in horror. What are those now? Wait, don't tell me those are missiles. As the missiles bear down on them, Evan panics and shouts at the sky. No, hold on, doing this from the start is foul. The scene shifts to the Demon King's throne room. From his seat of power, he looks down with contempt. Stupid hero, bastard. Have you still not learned your lesson even after being beaten so much? Demon King Belzar, a man with sharp red horns, smirks as he coolly operates a glowing, holographic terminal. I'll deal with you properly this time, using my greatest masterpiece. A targeting system on his screen locks onto the party. With a wicked grin, he taps the console to launch the attack, announcing its official designation. Anti-hero hybrid state-of-the-art fully armed absolute fortress ver 81. Evan, I will blow you away perfectly. A full-scale missile barrage rains down from the sky. A terrifying and unexpected attack launched from the Demon King's castle, leaving the party completely exposed and helpless below. Kim Yuta looks up in disbelief as a cluster of missiles suddenly appears in the sky. It's a total genre clash, and Yuta calls foul on the Demon King for bringing modern weapons to a fantasy fight. Evan James reacts instantly, his eyes glowing as he prepares a magic barrier to shield the group. He blocks the entire volley with a massive purple energy dome called the Universal Warehouse. Once the smoke clears, the hero quickly checks to make sure everyone is still standing. Yuta and L are genuinely impressed. He managed to stop all those high-tech projectiles at once. Yuta and L exchanged a silent look as they sized up Evan James. Despite his usually annoying and pathetic demeanor, it was clear that a successor is still a successor. James curses Belzar for going all out right from the start of their encounter. The hero gathers the party to explain the gravity of their situation. He explains that everything in the demon realm is part of a massive dungeon designed by the Demon King himself. It's a wasteland of lava and jagged rocks where the environment itself can be used against them. Right on cue, a mechanical Gatling gun turret rotates into position to lock onto the group. The turret opens fire, shredding the ground and forcing everyone to scramble for cover. High above, Demon King Belzar is actually manning the gun, taunting Evan for bringing companions along. He laughs, asking if they really thought he'd just let them waltz into his castle. Evan is fuming now, his teeth clenched as he prepares to settle his grudge with Belzar. He demands that the Demon King stop hiding behind traps and come out for a fair fight. The hero's eyes flash with a pink light, showing he's ready to go all the way. Belzar just smirks at the challenge, clearly having no intention of playing fair. He waves his hand, and a blue system screen pops up right in front of him. Yuta's jaw drops when he realizes the Demon King is using a status window. Seeing the interface makes him realize that Belzar isn't just a monster, he's a player too. Digital cubes start surrounding the party as Belzar tells them to watch the update. He announces the new Demon Realm dungeon, designed specifically for their arrival. A system notification pops up confirming the download of new map data. The tower system logs the update for the new dungeon layout. Before anyone can react, the party is forcibly warped away to the new dungeon. Yuta ends up in a dark stone corridor filled with green gas and skeletal remains. He barely has time to breathe before he's tumbling down a trapdoor, screaming about the unfair difficulty. He can't believe he triggered a massive trap just by touching a single loose brick. Yuta tries to catch his breath, wondering how many more death traps are hidden in these walls. Suddenly, Kalina leaps into action, swinging her heavy axe through the air. She smashes through a rain of falling boulders that were about to crush them both. The warrior stands her ground, calmly asking Yuta if he's still in one piece. Yuta is just relieved to see a friendly face in this hellhole. Looking around the foggy hallway, they realize they've been separated from the rest of the group. Yuta explains that they're stuck in a classic dungeon created specifically by the Demon King. Kalina gives him a blank stare, having no idea what a dungeon is supposed to be. He tries to explain it in gamer terms, saying these kinds of mazes pop up in games all the time. The place is a massive, multi-level labyrinth designed to keep anyone from finding the exit. Kalina admits she's already tried a few different paths, but she keeps looping back to the same spot. She looks at the endless stone walls, worried they'll never find a way out of this maze. Kim Yuta isn't giving up, deciding his first priority is to track down Evan and Asura. He's betting on the fact that Asura will definitely have some crazy way to break through this dungeon gimmick. Sure enough, Asura is already busy putting his fists to work, slamming the ground with a massive shockwave. As the dust settles, the martial artist stands there looking totally unbothered while the others watch in silence. Evan immediately loses his cool, screaming at him to stop smashing everything because it's messing up the navigation. Asura doesn't even look back, basically calling the hero a loudmouth who's all talk and no action. He decides he's done with the games and walks off to find his own path through the rubble. Evan just sighs and lets him go, figuring he'll just loop back to the starting point anyway. He turns his attention back to the task at hand, realizing the Demon King really didn't hold back this time. He checks his Pathfinder compass again, but the thing is completely useless in this messed up maze. Feeling the weight of the situation, the hero slumps down on the stairs while the little spirit elf floats nearby. He knows that if he fails here, there's no way he can ever show his face in the kingdom again. El breaks the silence, asking why he never mentioned there was another successor in the tower. She looks at him with a serious expression, sensing there's a lot more to the story than he's letting on. Evan tries to play it off, acting like he has no idea what she's talking about. But El isn't buying the act, pointing out that Demon King Belzar is clearly a player just like him. She explains that she felt the exact same successor's power coming from the Demon King. Evan finally drops the act and smirks, admitting that she's a lot sharper than she looks. He sits back and confesses the truth. There were actually two players who reached the top floor together. El listens intently as the hero starts revealing the hidden history of the tower. He explains that they thought they'd cleared it as a team, but the Goddess Eshua had different plans for them. Instead of one winner, she split the successor's power right down the middle. Evan was sent back to the human realm to live among his own kind. Meanwhile, Belzar was banished to the demon realm to rule over the monsters, causing them to become bitter rivals. El is stunned, realizing that the hero she's following might have some very dark motivations. Evan claims he wasn't lying about giving them the power, but it's useless as long as it's incomplete. He drops a bombshell, stating he doesn't actually care about being the successor at all. His face turns genuinely terrifying as he reveals his only true desire is to murder Belzar. The raw hatred in his eyes is enough to make the little spirit tremble in fear. Just as quickly, he snaps back to his usual self and laughs it off, telling her not to take him too seriously. He gets up to try and find the path again, just as Asura prepares to launch another devastating punch. Evan tries to warn him one last time that he's just going to end up right back where he started. Asura has zero patience for the lecturing and tells the windbag to just shut up and follow him. He looks back with a confident grin, claiming he's already found the actual way out. Evan is caught completely off guard, wondering what the hell the martial artist could have possibly found. Down in the shadows, a secret spiral staircase has been revealed, leading even deeper into the dungeon. Far below, an elegant demon in a crisp suit stands ready, gripping his sword as a mysterious light shines down. He adjusts his monocle, nodding that the hero actually managed to bypass the maze, and decides it's time to handle things personally. They're right back at the dragon statue for what feels like the 100th time. Kalina realizes the dungeon is just resetting them back to the start whenever they take a wrong turn. She's stumped on how they're supposed to find the right path when any marks they leave just vanish. Kalina asks Yuta if he notices anything off about the dragon statue they're staring at. Looking at it again, the proportions of the carving don't seem to match the original. Yuta agrees, it definitely looks smaller and the whole thing feels way sloppier. Suddenly, everything clicks for him. He tells Kalina he's figured out the trick to beat this place. His plan, just turn right around and go back the way they came. Kalina looks at him like he's lost his mind, completely lost on what he's planning. She's skeptical that retracing their steps is going to help them get anywhere. Yuta just laughs and says trying anything is better than just wandering aimlessly. Kalina sighs and decides to trust his crazy plan for now. They head back into the dark corridor together. They keep a steady pace, hopping they're actually making progress this time. They reach the dragon statue again, but the atmosphere feels different. Yuta has a huge grin on his face because his prediction was spot on. He explains that even though the hallway looks identical, they've actually moved forward. He tells Kalina to take a good look at the wall. She's completely stunned by what she sees. One of the torches that was dark before is now burning bright. Yuta explains the goal is to light every torch by searching for things he calls anomalies. Kalina stops him, needing a serious explanation of what he's talking about. She's never heard of a dungeon working like a puzzle game. He breaks it down. An anomaly is just anything that's different from the usual dungeon. Like a spiked trap suddenly popping out of the floor where it wasn't before. Or a weird eye symbol appearing on a wall that was plain a second ago. The rule is simple: if everything looks normal, move forward. If you spot an anomaly, turn back. They just have to keep repeating this until all the torches are lit. Kalina stares at him, wondering if he's actually serious about this. She doesn't fully get the logic, but she's willing to follow his lead to get out. Yuta gives a confident thumbs up, leaning on his years of hardcore gaming experience. Another torch flares to life, proving his gamer instincts are paying off. A massive stone gateway finally grinds open at the end of the hall. Yuta celebrates because the path to the next floor is finally open. Kalina admits she's impressed he actually managed to solve a riddle like that. Back in his old life, Yuta was the type who had to play every new game released to be satisfied. He tells her he caught the first anomaly, the small statue, the moment he saw it. Kalina gives a small smile and thanks him for the save. They reach the end of the path and find a massive hole leading deeper into the dungeon. It's time to head down and hopefully reunite with the rest of their party. They arrive in a giant arena, wondering exactly where they've ended up now. Yuta is looking around for Mr. and Evan, but the massive arena seems completely empty. Suddenly, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes looms right behind him, ready to strike. Kalina shouts a warning just as a blade flashes. She barely manages to block the sneak attack with her axe. Sparks fly as the heavy metal of the axe head meets the assassin's rapier. The attacker is a silver-haired elf in a suit who mocks them for actually surviving the Demon King's maze. He seems almost impressed that they've managed to reach this floor at all. Yuta tries to counter, but the guy is moving like a ghost. The elf is a blur of light trails, dancing around them with impossible speed. He makes it clear, as long as he's breathing, no one is getting anywhere near his master. Yuta is stunned. He's never seen anyone move this fast in his life. He realizes he can't even follow the guy's movements with his eyes. Kalina tries to close the distance, but the speed difference is way too much. She goes for a horizontal slash, but the butler just leaps over it with ease. He's completely relaxed, dodging every one of her strikes without breaking a sweat. The metal-on-metal clang rings through the arena as she struggles to find any opening. Kalina takes a breath, focusing every ounce of her strength on her next swing. She puts her back into it, but once again, she's just swinging at thin air. Suddenly, the butler closed the gap and appeared right behind her, his rapier leveled pointedly at her throat. Her eyes go wide as she realizes she's completely lost track of him again. The elf smirks, fully enjoying the look of shock on her face. He starts attacking from all directions at once, leaving her with no room to breathe. Kalina grit her teeth as she takes a few hits, realizing she's being toyed with. She knows she can't win a contest of pure speed, so she's going to have to try something else. The elf butler starts walking toward her, mocking her for being far too slow. He tells her that a heavy weapon like that will never be enough to land a hit on him. He was fully convinced that victory was already in his hands, but his moment of arrogance was cut short as his monocle shattered into pieces. Kalina just stares at him and repeats his words back with a cold, terrifying smile. She accesses her system inventory and pulls out a massive, multi-barreled Gatling gun, the ultimate counter to a speedster. Kalina realizes her standard axe swings are doing absolutely nothing against this guy's insane speed. She decides to swap tactics, opening her inventory to pull out something much more heavy-duty, a literal Gatling gun. Yuta is floored. 1 second she's got a sword, and the next she's hauling around a piece of modern artillery. He realizes she's using the system's inventory window to hot-swap her gear instantly. Even with a giant gun, Yuta's still worried since the boss is on a completely different level. Kalina doesn't hesitate, holding down the trigger and letting the bullets fly. Graydon is incredibly fast, weaving through the hail of lead like it's a light drizzle. Seeing the gun isn't enough to pin him down, Kalina reaches back into her inventory for another surprise. She tosses a grenade right at him while keeping the pressure on. Graydon doesn't even flinch, slicing the canister clean in half before it can hit him. But it was a trap. Instead of shrapnel, the room is instantly filled with a thick cloud of smoke. Caught off guard, the demon butler realizes too late that it was a smoke bomb meant to blind him. He figures she's trying to hide her movements to get a sneak attack in. He's right. Kalina is already drawing a fresh blade from the void and lunging through the haze. She swings with everything she's got, closing the gap in an instant. The sword was just another distraction. She swaps again mid-swing, this time for a massive battle staff. She slams the staff against his blade, locking him in place. Suddenly, the head of the staff starts crackling with intense blue electricity. A massive burst of lightning erupts from the weapon, engulfing the area in a blinding flash. Watching from the sidelines, Yuta is absolutely floored by how many weapons she's cycled through in one fight. Looking at her now, he feels like his own stats are basically a joke compared to her versatility. As the smoke begins to settle, the room goes quiet for a heartbeat. Graydon brushes himself off, actually sounding a bit impressed. He admits he's never seen a player fight like this. He gives her credit for being able to handle so many different weapon types with such high skill. Then the mood shifts. He tells her it's been a fun warm-up, but those were just trivial tricks. A dark, oppressive aura starts oozing out of him, dyeing the air a deep purple. Yuta gets a bad feeling as Graydon starts talking about a power he has yet to use. He's about to unleash a fraction of the ancient demon power sealed within his sword. He's ready to show them that all those fancy weapon swaps won't mean a thing once he gets serious. But before he can even finish his dramatic speech, a massive shadow looms over him as something crashes through the ceiling. It's Asura. He comes falling down like a meteor, and Graydon's smug expression vanishes instantly. The impact is absolute, shattering the stone floor and burying the boss under the rubble. Asura just stands up and looks around casually, like he didn't just turn the area boss into a pancake. Graydon is out cold, pinned under the wreckage. Yuta and Kalina can only stare in silence. The guy who was just bragging about his demon power is now just a literal floor mat. They look up and realize Asura didn't use the stairs. He just smashed a hole straight through every floor of the dungeon. Just then, Evan shows up, surveying the destruction. He's amazed Asura made it all the way down here by just destroying the floors. Yuta just scratches his head. It's a pretty brute force method, but he guesses it's very on brand for the guy. Evan laughs it off, saying even he didn't think Asura would actually follow through on his plan to just break his way to the end. Evan keeps chatting, clearly impressed that Asura is far more capable than he initially thought. Asura isn't in the mood for small talk, though. He's already looking ahead. Yuta looks down at the defeated butler, wondering who this guy really was and what his connection to the Demon King is. Evan explains that the guy they just flattened is Graydon, the personal butler of Demon King Belzar. Apparently, this guy is actually the second in command of the entire demon realm. In any normal scenario, he's a nightmare to deal with, especially once he transitions into his second phase. Evan laughs about how lucky they were that Asura crushed him into the floor before he could even transform. He's actually pretty impressed that they managed to hold their own against someone that strong with just a party of two. Yuta tries to act humble, giving all the credit to Kalina while claiming he just watched from the back. Since the boss is down for the count, Yuta wonders if the dungeon is officially cleared. He figures the exit has to be around here somewhere. Kalina points toward a doorway at the far end of the hall. A massive gate that was sealed shut until a second ago has finally swung open. Yuta is ready to get moving and get this dungeon over with. He's feeling pretty confident, thinking they should just ride this momentum all the way to the Demon King. Asura isn't quite as enthusiastic, calling Evan a damn hero and asking how much longer they have to do this wretched exercise. He's getting impatient and wants to finally meet this so-called Demon King. Evan just laughs it off, telling him to stay patient because they're almost there. He claims that once they clear the next stage, they'll be standing right in front of their final target. He tells everyone to just hang in there for a little bit longer. Yuta, starting to get suspicious, though, asking how Evan can be so sure about what's waiting for them on the next floor. Evan treats it like it's obvious, saying that after a mid-boss, the main boss is usually right around the corner. He plays it off as being a huge game enthusiast, claiming these kinds of patterns are basic common sense. He flashes a big smile and tells the group to go on ahead while he follows right behind. He says he just needs a minute to check the room for any remaining gimmicks or loot. Yuta goes along with it, though he still looks a little bit unsure about the guy. The group starts making their way toward the exit, leaving Evan alone in the massive hall. As soon as they're out of sight, the silence in the room becomes heavy. Evan's friendly hero persona completely vanishes, replaced by a cold, predatory grin. He looks down at the unconscious Graydon and decides it's time to finish things his own way. He holds his hand out, and a dark, swirling energy starts to form in his palm. He activates a hidden skill called Otherworld Warehouse, and a dark purple portal opens up right under the fallen demon. Graydon's body is pulled into the void, vanishing from the floor entirely. A pillar of light descends as the storage process finishes, leaving no trace of the boss behind. Evan smirks to himself. It turns out he's not just killing these bosses, he's collecting them. Behind him, a mental gallery reveals a massive wall of figures he's already captured. Graydon makes 70. His gaze turns toward the next floor with a chilling ambition. Hopping the Demon King Belzar will provide more of a challenge.